Hi, and welcome everybody to a brand new audio commentary for Power Rangers Lost of Galaxy, The Wrath of Trakeena. As it is I, Anthony Marsh Jr., the writer, director, voice actor, and such on my said Power Rangers Lost of Galaxy fan film. So if you're familiar to some of my audio commentaries on some of my stuff before, or like the audio commentary for my first Power Rangers Lost of Galaxy fan film, now today we're going to talk about my new installment of the series as I go around talking about the things that happened behind the scenes, and as well as some little Easter eggs that you probably didn't notice. And I will also talk about some general stuff that happened within my film, by the way. And I've already set the timestamp at 0. It's the movie's already starting now, so if you want to follow along what I'm saying, go ahead and feel free to. You see, it has taken me about 2 years to film Wrath of Trakeena, even though originally the film, was originally entitled Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, The Wrath of Trakeena. So this whole entire time doing this movie, it took nearly forever to make this movie. And as the movie starts, it starts off immediately after where my last Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan film, for those who have seen my last fan film 4 years ago, it starts off with Scorpius talking about my main villain from the first movie, albeit a ripoff by design of Darth Malgus from Star Wars, The Old Republic. Forgive me for that. Make it like it was cosplay. But, I really wanted to start this movie off on a ominous note, because for those who criticized my last fan film of Power Rangers Lost Galaxy from 2014, I decided with this movie I wanted to take things seriously, as opposed to what I did, in the past. Although I will still retain some elements of Power Rangers, still retain with the campiness and such that, and the charm it had, but at the same time I want to take things seriously. Now, as you can note here in this part of the movie, I started filming around November of 2015. That was when I was doing pre-production stuff. So I did some of this stuff early, and then, this spot here with the Red Ranger and the Blue Ranger talking about setting up the movie right now. In that conversation scene, it took place at the Hadley Farms Community Center by that playground. You can tell that playground. And at this time, I was working on those webisodes of Power Rangers Lost of Galaxy, The Wrath of Trakeena, the 2015-2016 webisode series. And these webisodes took place in 2015. This was a few weeks or so before I moved to this apartment where I'm at now, because in 2015, I know tragedy struck, but I don't want to talk about that. That's too personal. Some of this footage is condensed from those webisodes that I shot. If you've seen them on my YouTube channel already, check it out. But there is going to be some notable changes from the webisode edit to the final film edit. You're going to notice some notable changes of some of the dialogue, and as well as some stuff that I cut out, because you see, the movie, by the way, is my very first movie to go on longer than 2 hours, and it's the very first, for all of you guys in the Power Rangers fandom, if you're not aware of my fan film by now, the animation to the screen for this is on the link once you clicked on this commentary video. This is the very first Power Rangers fan film made by me, and of course, to be a 3-hour long Power Rangers fan film. I know that's a lot. If you don't want to watch this movie for 3 hours, you can just click away and move, go on with your business elsewhere. Not to say it in a rude, politely way if you're not into this kind of stuff. Now, for those who are into this kind of 3-hour long, if this was like the longest of let's say a podcast, stick around and listen to what I have to say about my film, because not all of it is positive. That I have to say, there is some few things I'll say positive about my project, even though I've worked on it for so long. But at the same time, there's going to be some things that I am pretty ashamed and to be disgusted or ridiculed about on my own about this film, and as well as the flaws. And now, as we are into this point where we are in the timestamp, 4 minutes and 12, according to the commentary track is a little delayed from the actual runtime of the movie. But okay, so where we are at this point, if you go at the timestamp of the movie, if you're following along with me, this is Scorpius meeting the Rangers. But this time around, in this version of, this fight, I adapted from Lost Galaxy episode 21, I believe. Yeah, 21, Heir to the Throne, where the Rangers first encounter Scorpius. But in this version of the Scorpius versus Ranger fight, which I adapted from the season, the Stingwingers are not involved. Deviant is not in the picture. He won't be around until about, let's say 4 or 5 minutes after this fight, if you're following along with the film, of course. Now, Scorpius, he's only in my movie, like I said, and when I made details according to my vlog, he's only in my movie for about 2 or 3 minutes, because I just want to get on straight to the point with what this movie should be about, that I think a lot of you guys have been waiting for. Because, you see, when I did my first Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan film, there were plans of doing a 3-hour-long movie before, but I don't think people would deal with seeing me doing a puppet movie I've been doing for 3 hours. Everything I filmed within a year or two, and then it's all puppets made of cardboard and all that stuff. And again, if you're not into this kind of thing, that's okay. But, you can, just click away from this video as much as possible. Now, what Scorpius said about, anyway, what was I say as soon as I got distracted? Now, when Scorpius told him that about the Rangers, saying that, he heard that some of them, kidnapped Trinkina, and now here's the difference from my webisode version to the final film version. In the webisode version, I know I was going by what the show is because, with the aesthetic of Power Rangers Lost Galaxy for my inspiration. Since, after all, now, for those who are unaware, these fan films of Power Rangers Lost Galaxy are not in the same universe as Power Rangers Lost Galaxy and all of Prime Power Rangers continuity itself. Rather, it takes place in an alternate continuity separate from the TV show, but the aesthetics from the TV show are somewhat intact with some modified changes I did to some of the looks of the characters and several stuff, because I wanted to make these films different from the show, because I didn't want to, rip off everything that the show already did, that Saban, Judlin, Jonathan Zacher, and them did with Lost Galaxy nearly 20 years ago. So as we go on with the fight with Scorpius throws the Red Ranger to some boxes like on the TV show. This time, instead of the Blue Ranger going after for the Red Ranger to help him, I decided to switch it for the Yellow Ranger, according to the shot. And I just didn't want to, resemble most of all of the same scenery. And this time, not having Deviant in the background watching them, and as a ploy, for those who've seen Heir to the Throne and seen how that played out on the TV show. And the Rangers catch the Yellow Ranger because, blue and, green and pink save her from Scorpius' tentacle as he throws her to them. And then they get back up and try to stop Scorpius. This time, unlike in the TV show, they don't use the lights of Orion to take him down. They just try to get a grip on him to stop him so the Red Ranger can take the advantage to strike him. But then something different happens, because, you see, what I was trying to do is I didn't want to make this completely concisely scene for scene on point from the TV show, like how, in the scene where the Rangers try to get a grip on Scorpius by his tentacles while they're in their Lights of Orion armor, because I didn't want to copy what was already there. So I had to make some, cosmetic differences from the TV show to the film, to this fan film, because I didn't want this film to contradict the continuity that already exists on the TV show over 20 years ago. And then that deleted shot with the Rangers running away from the explosion of Scorpius, and then that added stock explosion to make it look like the building of the warehouse exploded. It's a plot twist and a spoiler that, something that the TV show didn't do, that I wished the show did, to expand upon why Trinkina became the main villain and why she wanted revenge against the Power Rangers, what they did to Scorpius. See, how I would have wrote this off was, I understand what the guys did, what the Saban guys did with Lost Galaxy 20 years ago was fine. How it impacted to make Trinkina's character development great. But how I would have wrote it off was, while after the Rangers only fought Scorpius and, Red Ranger struck him down with the Quasar Saber, I would have liked it if Deviant from in the deleted scene would have blew up Scorpius so he can manipulate, but they had to cut it to make it the Power Rangers did it, and that's how Trinkina would come into the picture and say those Power Rangers will pay for, But in my version of Lost Galaxy, like I said in many videos before this movie's release or so, that I did not want to make Scorpius and Trinkina father and daughter in this version, since, again, this is an alternate universe. This is not in the same Power Rangers Lost Galaxy universe, part of all the history of Power Rangers, because knowing that Lost Galaxy, I'm speaking too fast. If you guys can't understand what I'm saying, I'll slow down a little bit for you about that. That this version of Lost Galaxy is set in an alternate dimension, and I'm trying not to have this contradict what was already on the show 20 years before when I did this film, before I even did this film. And then, speaking of Deviant, here we are at the timestamp of 10 minutes and 16 some seconds if you're following. Well, the commentary track is minutes behind. Excuse me. Deviant shows up and fights the Rangers. Scorpius is dead at this point. He doesn't have no pep talk scene with Scorpius about if he should take over and conquer the universe or have any involvement with the Cocoon, because again, I just didn't want to copy a lot from the TV show storyline, because I think what Lost Galaxy did on the show in terms of all the history of Power Rangers was fine enough, but in this standalone alternate universe fan film, I just want to play things different from what the TV show never got to do. And that's why I had my personal freedom to do what I wanted with the source material doing these fan films and having them set off as an alternate universe. And then this fight between Deviant and the Rangers. Now, this is the very first fight in the film, but though from the webisodes, again, well, one of them, if you watch it, where I utilize footage in between of my puppet footage, with spliced in between the Soul Calibur 5 footage with my custom character created footage. And because once again, I'm just doing a 17-minute recap of what I think will be the main story point for the film to lead on, because let's just say that the webisodes that I've done between 2015 and 2 years ago, because that was, the last webisode I did was the episode called Red Ranger Who, which you should check out, by the way. I only produced about 16 webisodes of Rise of Trakeena leading into Wrath of Trakeena's events. So the first 17 minutes of the film is just a small 17-minute recap, with footages from episodes 2 and 3 of the webisodes, but cut down to get straight to the point, and also with some different music in the background and different cuts to stuff, and as well as some footage I never added into the webisodes prior, because I just didn't want to, waste a bunch of time and get prolonged to the point when is Trinkina going to show up in the film. So that's one of the reasons why this with I wanted to pick up the pace on some things. I didn't want to waste a lot of people's time. With this movie and such to wait and see how long is Trinkina gonna show her face in this movie, and then people are gonna be like, man, how long they're gonna ask how long is it gonna take for this movie to show Trinkina and stuff like that. So right now, you just saw Scorpius for 2 minutes, Deviant for the first 4 minutes, him fighting off the Rangers. Now, another thing that I had to adapt from Lost Galaxy, like I said in my vlog, if you watched my vlog, I know it's a 2-hour long video where I've ranted about my final thoughts. I said that the fight between the Pink Ranger and Deviant, I wanted to do something similar from in tribute to the episode The Power of Pink from Lost Galaxy. But now a lot of you guys were kind of, some of you were a little curious. I know some of you don't really care about this kind of stuff I'm doing, but I'm just going to get you guys in the know about this. If you are a Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan, and if you are a fan of my content, if you're not a fan of my content, here's the breakdown on this. You see, I just didn't want to bring up the Psycho Rangers in this movie, even though the Psycho Rangers were around during Trinkina's reign of power during the second half of Lost Galaxy, and yes, we had the Space and Galaxy Ranger team up in between To the 10th Power and Power of Pink. But I decided not to have Psycho Pink around because it would be a little way too soon. Because again, I have plans on having the Psycho Rangers for Power Rangers Lost Galaxy 3. But the thing is, the Pink Ranger that I have not named Kendricks or any of the, because again, I didn't want to do names of the Rangers that we know in Power Rangers continuity, but going with names of characters I made exclusive for these films if they were the Power Rangers. And as for the character Gwen McQueen, with the likeness of actress Katie Cassidy on the puppet of her unmorphed and such, I had to pay homage to Kendricks' death, but minus the whole Savage Sword and Psycho Pink parts, because I just felt that, well, I just wanted to make something similar and different, well, about the consequences, about, you know, how Lost Galaxy played off sacrifice and death in their season. If Trinkina lost Scorpius, the consequence of the death of her, well, father in the TV show, but in the fan film, in the movie version, I just didn't want to refer to Scorpius as her father. The consequence was the Rangers would lose one of their own, and that being the Pink Ranger. You see, I really wanted to kill off one of my Rangers to set up the status quo of the films, because I think as a response to those who criticized my first Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan film, I wanted to play things off serious, because I felt that the death of Gwen, as based on Kendricks' sacrifice and death, but Gwen's death was just unsudden. I know many people were not shocked about my OC getting killed off in battle, because again, if the character with Katie Cassidy's likeness was named Kendricks, and if my characters were Leo, Maya, Damon, and Kai still named, then it would have been. But again, it just feels exactly, almost roughly the same, but except my Blue Ranger is not played, in likeness of an Asian actor, but rather a white, and my Yellow Ranger female. Yellow Ranger is not from Illinois. She's just a regular civilian working in Terra Venture, but she dons the Yellow Ranger power regardless. But whereas the Red, Pink, and Green Rangers, their likenesses based on the character likenesses of the original characters are identically the same, but except they're not named, like, let's say with Wes Bentley's likeness of my Red Ranger named Leo, or Don Cheadle, like, his likeness is, Damon, to represent Damon. And Katie Cassidy, her likeness, Laurel Lance herself from Arrow, Black Canary, Black Siren, and her likeness was Kendricks. But I just didn't want to go with those names of those characters, because we've seen how that played out in Power Rangers continuity. Again, in this alternate continuity, I just wanted to pay homage to the things that happened in Lost Galaxy, because you guys should know that I'm a big fan of these Power Rangers, but I wanted to do something, tell half of the same story of their season, but with different protagonists taking on the powers, and then you got new takes of villains that we're familiar with from the source material. Okay, now at this point in the movie, according to the timestamp here, 17 minutes and 50 seconds, this was from episode 13, but just the beginning of it, about Tony's grieving recap of Gwen's death, because, well, in between it, when I did multiple cuts of this movie before the release, the scene where Deviant and VillaMax were talking in between, that was in multiple earlier cuts of my movie, but I decided to cut that scene out because it was from the webisodes again, but condensed for like 2 minutes, because I felt the beginning, let's face it, the beginning of the movie was going on, well, with the webisode footage in between what footage I made exclusive for the film itself, was going on about like 25-30 minutes long, dragging the movie on almost near 4 hours. So I had to cut a whole bunch of stuff during the cutting room floor. So, I just didn't want to make the characters come off exactly like, how, knowing that the Rangers that we've known for 20 years in Lost Galaxy are fan favorites, but now, you see, many people are going to be asking this question about my OC Red Ranger of Tony Marshall. Why does he barely have the same civilian look that Leo had in the second half of Lost Galaxy? I thought he was his own character. Well, Tony is his own character, but I just didn't want him to be completely like Leo in an essence, because, well, just because Leo wore a blue shirt blue jacket shirt, a red tank top, and some white cargo pants. But my Red Ranger, OC Red Ranger, in civilian form, he has more like a blue jacket, a regular red t-shirt, not tank top, and white khakis rather than white cargo pants. So that's why I decided to make him a little bit more different from Leo, and especially with the facial hair notwithstanding, his facial hair being like a goatee, you know, an all facial goatee notwithstanding. And I just didn't want to make him completely the same character. I wanted to make my Red Ranger a lot more brooding than Leo's character, because Leo's character was a stowaway on Terra Venture. He was an adventure. He wanted to seek for adventure. He was, you know, how he was, and how Leo's character was in the series itself. But Tony in the movies that I've done, he's more rather the brooding, mysterious Red Ranger. He's a very questionable leader to be the, you know, leader of the Power Rangers. And then as for, you know, go by like Lost Galaxy's formula with the Red Ranger, Six Ranger being brothers thing, the Red Ranger's brother, I had to have two guys white to, you know, look like similar to each other. So when I did the first fan film of Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, the Red Ranger's brother, not Mike, but I didn't want to call, again, I just didn't want to stick with the names of the original characters again. That the likeness for the Red Ranger's brother wearing a Terra Venture civilian form in the first movie, he was originally Jake Gyllenhaal's likeness for the Jesse Marshall character. Because in the beginning I didn't think about Brandon Routh until the sequel, which I just did now. And then I also did some more Easter eggs and homages to Lost Galaxy again, like, for example, here with Tony doing some GSA combat training in his GSA uniform. But, you know, Leo in the episode, if you've seen the episode Rookie in Red where the Rangers got the trans daggers, Leo wasn't in his GSA uniform for quite some time, for a while. He was only in that uniform for half of the episode until he resigned his position, which I also paid homage from an earlier Lost Galaxy episode, even though most of the majority of this fan film is based on the episodes where Trinkina became the main villain of Lost Galaxy. But again, there's some things I paid homage from the series as I was inspired to make the film, but everything else about this movie is all original storytelling, even though I just didn't want to tell, you know, beat for beat the same story. That Halo Spartan soldier. I know. I mean, if I'm a fan of Power Rangers, I would be a fan of Halo. But knowing the fact, you know, the GSA patrol soldiers, they were inspired by Master Chief's costume from the Halo games. Even though I only have of all the Halo games, I only have the first two games on the original Xbox. I never played Halo 3, Halo 4, or the recent one, or even some of the spin-offs like ODST or Halo Wars. So. Now, this scene here is the Dear John scene. Now, this is very controversial to talk about. When I was about to put everything together about this movie in terms of the editing and post-production, my original cut of Power Rangers Lost Galaxy: The Wrath of Trakeena from at this point in this movie here, things were playing off drastically different. And the storyline was very different from this point, following the patrol training scene. My brother, who didn't want no involvement in my Power Ranger films because he has reasons why. He told me why. When I told him about my fan film and this in particular, my film was coming off too much like a self-insert documentary kind of story based on what was going on in my life because most of the majority of the fan film was based on all the behind the scenes tumult that I was going through with this film for 8 years. And It had my original idea for this film was to start off having how I would start Trekina's introduction in this film, where she would be in human form, but not as like, you know, what we saw in that Stolen Beauty episode, that dumbfounded episode where Trekina was human, and you know, crew mummy and all that. And you know, Trinkina in her human disguise, there is a cut of Power Rangers Lost Galaxy: The Wrath of Trakeena that had that stuff that, you know, what I'm describing in you know, Pacific, where Trinkina was in her human form stalking my Red Ranger in his civilian form. And part of that subplot, you know, it kind of did drag my movie down a bit. That's why I did these reshoots, by substituting some of the things that happened from my real life that this film was originally going to be inspired by, and less like a Power Rangers film. And the Dear Tony getting the Dear John letter thing, that was, of course, if you know in real life what happened in Power Rangers for real, yes, in that episode of Power Rangers Zeo, There's No Business Like Snow Business 3-parter, where Tommy had that Dear John letter from Kimberly. This is exactly what I got for my Red Ranger of Tony to deal with getting a Dear John letter from Gwen, but even though Gwen died before this ever happened. Oh yeah, Kristen Milioti. And you know, that's funny. Now this scene here with Tony walking around, this was around at Old Town Gaithersburg, since, by the way, I'm from Gaithersburg, Maryland. You know, the difference between Power Rangers Lost Galaxy 1 and Power Rangers Lost Galaxy 2. I did more outdoor on location shooting than most of everything done indoors, because when I did my first Power Rangers Lost Galaxy film 5 years ago, I couldn't do no outdoor filming because my dad wanted me to stay indoors because this was, you know, back in when I was still living with him and stuff after high school till his death and stuff, because he had reasons why. But now, since I have the freedom to do what I want now in terms of filming movies, doing more outdoor stuff with the puppets and stuff, I had to be precautious of who would see me with this stuff, because I didn't want people to think I was being, you know, whatever. And then when they see these puppets with the likenesses of these Hollywood actors, oh hey, How I Met Your Mother, and yeah, and you see, that's the thing. I just didn't want to. I just didn't want people to think that these Hollywood actors were in my movie for real. It's just me with the puppets with their faces on it, you know. So I just wanted to make it like as though they were in my movies, even though people would think that's just me being crazy. That's funny. You know, I think for those who saw my podcast about my fan casting of my second Pink Ranger, since I had to go by the footsteps of the series, considering that Lost Galaxy had two different Pink Rangers, first Ben Kendricks and then later the former Geronimo herself, Carone. Now, you know, this is what's really daunting here. Considering that, that building, that blue building that represents Star Corp, that's that building I keep seeing around in Gaithersburg, around at the Washingtonian Grove at Rio by my local movie theater. Oh, and Chris Donner with the likeness of, you know, modern day Kirk himself, Chris Pine. You know, that's funny. You know, about my second Pink Ranger, if you've seen the video for it. Oh wait, I deleted it. Sorry. But I do remember I did plan on fan casting my second Pink Ranger. The name was unknown at the time when I had mentioned the fan casting, since Lost Galaxy had two different Pink Rangers. That at this point I was going to fan cast. You see, I'm good with fan casting who I wanted to represent these characters. I know some people were like wondering why is the Yellow Ranger I got not resembling Serena Vincent's Maya character, the Yellow Ranger. And but about the two Pink Rangers though, you know, at this point I think I told you guys in a few videos or so that I was inspired to fan cast that second Pink Ranger, Siri. You know, instead of, you know, going with the names of the characters from Prime Power Rangers continuity from my universe, in my reimagining of the series, I had to come up with a fan casting of an actress that I didn't think would be out of nowhere. I thought this actress, when I looked at her the first time, I didn't think she was going to be something. And when I saw Kristen Milioti, I'm like, who's that? And then I was like, oh, that's the mother from How I Met Your Mother. And of course, and at that time, I also came across her again in late 2014 when she was on that, short-lived TV show. If you probably heard of it from my video ran about that, A to Z, that used to air for only 1 year and 13 episodes on NBC throughout the 2014-2015 TV schedule, which also aired alongside that other short-lived show that featured Kate Walsh in it, Bad Judge. And that's how I got inspired to put my Kristen Milioti's likeness as my Pink Ranger, because I guess it was because I was gushing about Kristen Milioti a lot, and still do. Yeah. As for Project Go Buster, this thing. Now, you see, the film was written years before what we have right now with Power Rangers, in terms of Hasbro owning the rights to the franchise now and the toys. And when they announced that Beast Morphers was going to be the next season of Power Rangers after Super Ninja Steel, before Beast Morphers was even a thing right now and being announced in cast set, that I originally was going to do my fanfic attempt of doing my own adaptation of Go Busters for Power Rangers before Hasbro brought Power Rangers, and then they looked at upon the Go Buster footage, because when Hasbro got Power Rangers and when Saban sold Power Rangers to Disney, my point, I never thought that I thought they were going to do Q Ranger next, in terms of the Skipping Sentai debacle. But then when I heard that they looked upon Go Buster, one of the Sentais that Saban skipped, I knew that from then and there, I knew that somehow Go Busters was going to be a Power Ranger series. But as of this recording and as of the movie's already released 2 months in, I decided now not to do my own fan-made, fanfic adaptation of Go Busters for Power Rangers, since Beast Morphers is finally becoming a reality, so I decided to drop that. This conversation scene with Tony and Jesse at the park, that's Boer Park by the Boer Park community, right next to the same street as the high school. So actually, knowing as you watch the entire movie, since there's a whole bunch of scenes that I shot at this park, at Boer Park, by my old high school, and as between that and parts of North Frederick, where I live at, in Gaithersburg. So there was a lot of scenes I filmed that took place at the park, because especially in that big outfield where there's that big track, the big rounded track going around, and then you got all this grass or the trees. Well, when you get around seeing all those scenes in the movie, that's where most of the majority of all the fight scenes and stuff took place. Kind of like back in the old days of Power Rangers, mostly during the Mighty Morphin era, where most fight scenes would take place at the park. Now, if this fan film was a Mighty Morphin fan film, and I did exactly what the TV show did with, when Zordon would be like, Rangers, there's a monster disturbance at the park, and all that stuff, and a monster's attacking the Angel Grove Park and something like that. Yeah, that's the kind of thing I would probably do homage. Oh, VillaMax and Kegler are not around in the movie that often, since after all, you see, unlike my last attempt at doing a Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan film called Rise of Trakeena, whatever, you see, my original fan film attempt at Rise of Trakeena from 8 to 7 years ago, I had so many superfluous villain characters and stuff, and Trinkina was barely in the film, and I've said this a lot of times in old videos in passing, but, on my YouTube channel, but I've really said, too much about that, when I did Rise of Trakeena in the past, I had someone to do Trakina's voice, but she didn't want nothing to do with me or the project, and she, departed. She just silently quit the film, and it left me in a big rut of rejection and several other things that happened. But I got over it now. But it's just back then when I did the fan film, she didn't want to do the movie. She was my first choice before I found anyone else to do her voice before she even quit. But after she quit, then I had to find someone else, and it's hectic. I mean, Rise of Trakeena or / Wrath of Trakeena, this fan film was a nightmare behind the scenes, an absolute nightmare. Now, in some cuts of the movie, Trinkina was going to show up 40 minutes or 50 minutes into the movie because knowing how the beginning of the movie was, the beginning of the film was going on too long, and I had to cut down some of the beginning so I can get straight to the point. So I felt that 33 minutes into the movie, I would introduce her into the movie 30 minutes later, just to get cut straight to the point. Now, that mask that Trinkina had, this is just my response to, how I was. If you guys know how I am as a Power Rangers fan and Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan as a whole, I never liked the Trinkina's Revenge from Lightspeed Rescue, and, we already know those issues behind the scenes why. But now I decided I needed to get over it. This scene literally is a reshoot of a scene that I did in episode 5 of the webisodes. Check it out on my YouTube channel. It's called Enter the Queen of Darkness Part 1, where it's just basically VillaMax and Kegler meeting Trinkina, and this is basically just a reshoot of that scene. But it was also based on a scene that I shot of Trinkina when she first saw VillaMax and another villain, not Kegler, in my original attempt of Rise of Trakeena from 8 years ago that I had done with someone that I will not mention name anymore. Because of what I did recently 3 years ago, but back then. But it's just where she said lines like "I am Trinkina, ruler of the universe, aka the insectile queen of darkness." That I had to keep from my original. I mean, some of these lines and dialogue that I had from my original Rise of Trakeena film attempt is finalized here because you see. Doing this fan film took me 8 years of production and development. Hell, because it was just a difficult, process trying to get everything straight and everything together. So. Yeah, and then those words like Queen of Darkness, what the hell? That's also from my original fan film pitch and my original concept back when I was, again, having problems doing this movie. Here's also another thing. When I think for a lot of you that didn't know where I was trying to come at for the last 8 years in the fandom and doing this fan film. Now, speaking about those Neo Vipers and the Stingwingers' heads being on those Neo Vipers, my original vision and my original attempt of Power Rangers Lost Galaxy The Rise of Trakeena, what I was inspired to do this film back when I worked on it for so long and why it took me 8 years to get it off the ground and finally, taking this long to get to the point. I was originally inspired by another thing, because if you've seen my recent G.I. Joe and Power Rangers podcast, I did said that, my fan film of Rise of Trakeena was originally going to be the G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra of Power Ranger fan films. And if you've seen, now for those who've seen G.I. Joe, G.I. Joe The Rise of Cobra with Channing Tatum, Marlon Wayans and them in it from 9 years ago, that movie was my inspiration for this fan film at first. But you see, as time went on in the day and age now with movies, with with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, like with movies like Avengers, Infinity War, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Spider-Man: Homecoming, Winter Soldier, Civil War, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and such, and several other superhero movies not MCU nowadays, I decided to drop that idea and concept from years ago because 2010, 2011, when I did this in the past, it's been ages since I've done this attempt. But I just didn't want to copy what was already done because, you see, that original vision, when I did these fan films with paper dolls and then trying to make it like it considering Rise of Trakeena was the Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan film I really been wanting to make for so long, and it never materialized, and I never got the movie off the ground. All these years later, and now here I am all these years later and finalized what I couldn't do years ago back in my old high school years. Oh yeah, and that stop motion of the Stingwinger flipping around and stuff, stop motion. And I just never did, I never got the film done the way I wanted it to, because when I did the film back in high school in my 12th grade year, 8 years ago, I never got to do the things I wanted. And considering this was my very first movie, so that's why I did this movie out of order, to do the film I did 4 years ago that you guys saw, that you ridiculed me for in the past. And I really the film was going to be G.I. Joe Rise of Cobra meets Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, but then due to that same when she quit the film, and then because I was kind of saying some uncomfortable things about the characters, thinking that the character Trinkina, I was going to lend her to do the voice of because of the cleavage. That's probably one of the reasons why I was obsessed with this fan film for the last 7 years, and also obsessing of my past guilt on the failures of not having the film out when it was supposed to originally for a 2011 release. But now it's 2018. It took me 2 years to do a final cut and a final version of what was my original vision, because my original vision was already ruined, was already in scrutiny, and basically this was all my fault that I screwed myself over of not having the goal met, because I did something that, I just realized I should have never did, what I did back then compared to what I would do now, because, again, I just, I messed up on the original attempt, because at least in this version of the fan film, at least you're going to see more of Trinkina than ever before, because when I did Rise of Trakeena years ago, Trinkina was barely in my fan film. She was in a lot of scenes that were written, but then most of the time was given to other villains, and half of the villains would have her dialogue. And like Deviat here, since we're here in where we are in the timestamp, 42 2 minutes. If you're following according to the commentary track, 42 38 minutes later. And Deviat had more screen time than Trinkina. VillaMax had more screen time than Trinkina. All those villains I made up exclusively for these films take over screen time for Trinkina. And several others, because it's just the film was a nightmare. So that's why I had to cut out a bunch of characters from, by the time I did the rewrites and then the final cut of the film, and then taking 2 years to film this. So yeah, that's why I had to do what I had to do there. Oh God, I'm gonna regret saying that. I just felt that, taking from what I know about the villains of Lost Galaxy and about Trinkina and Deviat's power struggle. Because bear in mind, Trinkina and Deviat are some of the best villains Lost Galaxy had, and with all of Power Rangers. You see, this version of Deviat that I did for this fan film, I wanted Deviat to feel like he was a victim of Trinkina's abuse. To make it out into a way like, what if Deviat was abused by Trinkina And, being, considering that Deviat was Trakeena's underling, she banished him from being part of her army. He kept wanting in and come back in, but she kept rejecting him until she gets so fucking riled up, excuse me for the F word, so completely riled up with him. And that's why I made him say things like, Trakeena's you ruined my life and you such a bitch. That's something that, again, this fan film is PG-13, and this is not in the same universe of Power Rangers, because since Power Rangers, knowing the show, the way how it's written for kids. See, this fan film I was trying to write this for people around my demographic, the adult Power Ranger fans who want to see a PG-13 take on Power Rangers, and, how I would take the material, in a serious PG-13 tone. And I know I came off doing some things like it was like something out of Robot Chicken or South Park with me coming off a little silly in certain takes and certain stuff. And then, saying curse words like the B word when he called Trinkina a bitch, because I thought, because I felt that Deviat just couldn't stand it, that Trinkina was more, according into the fandom conscious, that Trinkina is a fan favorite villain than Deviat is, because knowing that, Trinkina is more well developed, while Deviat just had somewhat slightly almost the same amount of development as she does. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted Deviat to feel like he was abused by Trinkina, because I guess he just deserved it, So there was that.
Where the heck have you been? What do you think of that? I was talking with Tony over at the park. Somebody with you and ground yourself before this person is very urgent.
And again, when I did the reshoots and stuff, there was that storyline with the Ursula, Tony Marshall stuff. That happened in my original cut of the film until I was told to reshoot some stuff. Because again, you see, the version of the film of Wrath of Trakeena I was doing the film was 2 years of filming. So the first year of filming was very rough in 2016. You see, all year of 2016 being in this exact room, this apartment here. I wasn't doing hardly anything other than do work on this fan film and stuff, and I was going through some stuff personally that I can't talk about here or anywhere that happened to me after it was a year after my father's death. Oh, hey, crew mummy. And so it was like, the first year was rough, and when I started filming Power Rangers Lost of Galaxy: The Wrath of Trakeena in March of 2016, 2 years ago, the movie was a mess first year of filming, because I was going through some personal problems in 2016, but I made up for all those problems last year for the remainder of the filming. And some scenes had to be dropped, especially the Tony Marshall, Ursula Hirschman stuff that happened and made Trinkina the one, and then also this plot about Trinkina filing a restraining order against the Red Ranger. I know that's something that should not belong in Power Rangers, because like what my brother described it, that would be something that would be in something you would see out of because for someone like me, believe it or not, I've been watching a bunch of those Lifetime TV movies, and where you had like women being victims of stalking and all that other crap, ex-boyfriends or ex-husbands and stuff like that. That's how this movie was going to come off. It was going to be like a soap opera with Power Rangers. It was going to be a soap opera with Power Rangers. Most of the film's original cut, in between scenes like this, like the Rangers fighting crew mummies, since there's only 3 of them, other than the other two are distracted by Trinkina. Most of the majority of the film was based on what was going on with me during the recent time of my life at this point in my life. And I was, okay, I knew that adding on that storyline about some interference and influence from real life, I realized what I was doing was just self-inserting what happened in my real life into something that's fictitious. And even though it's something that I'd done in for an alternate universe Power Rangers story and series, and based on a pre-existing Ranger series, because no one in Lost Galaxy, and then all the Power Rangers, and what supervillain wanted to follow a restraining order against a Power Ranger? That makes no sense. And unlike the last movie, I finally got to do some morph sequences. You see, despite the runtime of 3 hours long, I was not going to have enough time to do all the monster fights. I just bring in the monsters as they go, as time goes on, just for one scene only, and then don't see them ever again. Unfortunately, sadly. So therefore, they're out of the picture. So Crew Mummy, I don't know if I'll bring them back for another movie or two, or not at all. I said I was going to do this trilogy, so I don't have enough time to show off Crew Mummy. And same go for the next monster we'll have from Lost Galaxy's Rogue Gallery later. So, therefore, it's just due to the runtime. I just didn't want to show off a bunch of characters on like my original attempt at Rise of Trakeena in the past, because when I did the fan film again, like I said, I had too many characters, and even my my original written script before I did the typed up script on since I've been writing the scripts for these movies on Microsoft Word instead of using screenwriting software to write scripts professionally. I mostly write my scripts like, you know, on my computer on Microsoft Word rather than screenwriting software. And you see, due to the runtime and due to the amount of stuff I had to film, I just didn't want to have a bunch of characters take over Trakeena's thunder this time, as I like to put it, because when I did the fan film years ago, I just couldn't get Trakeena in this movie. That's why when I did this movie originally in 2010, 2011, and even some of 2012 until I canceled it, if you remember back when I did my very first video on this YouTube channel that was basically a re-upload from my earlier YouTube channel before PR Lost Galaxy 2014, where I said that Rise of Trakeena was canceled and a Power Rangers Lost Galaxy 2014 reboot is in development now. And you know that video, but that video somewhere still exists. But if you remember that video, that very first video I uploaded where I started off using the Power Rangers Lost Galaxy theme song, and then the video would cut to, that part of the video would cut to me.
Hello, boys. Who the hell? Are you the one that dragged us here? What do you want?
This scene was essentially also a reshoot of that scene also that I shot when I did the film in 2016 originally. See, this scene with Trinkina meeting the two ranger, my blue and green rangers unmorphed. This was basically a reshoot of what already happened in my, my original cut of Wrath of Trakeena, where Trinkina would see my blue and green rangers unmorphed, but in her house, but with Trinkina showing her her actual self in the flesh, not in her human disguise, because I didn't want it to do. Now, if I had Trinkina in her human form again, I didn't want to have Trinkina disguise, using her Tracy disguise, which was from Amy Roll's Trinkina in Power Rangers Lost Galaxy from that one-off episode where Trinkina was human. And that same episode where she wished that Trinkina, any of you guys know in Lost Galaxy, remember in that episode when Trinkina was worried that all the women on Terra Venture were more prettier than her? That's why she had Crew Mummy to solidify her problem by de-beautifying all the women of Terra Venture, including the Pink and Yellow Rangers, and take their beauty away from them and make Trinkina the more superior, beautiful woman, girl in the galaxy. Because again, when Trinkina started off in Lost Galaxy, Trinkina was a spoiled brat. But in my movie version, in my version of this for this movie, I didn't want Trinkina to be like her TV counterpart and all the that we all know and familiar with from all of the history of Power Rangers. Because again, I didn't want this movie to take place in the same universe as the TV show. I think the idea of having, the plot, the motivation and plot device of Trinkina stalking the Rangers, I thought this would be something to make her somewhat more threatening in this version of Lost Galaxy as opposed to what we know. Because you see, Trinkina never stalked the Rangers. This is only in the TV show? No, she never did that. We know how her character was on the TV show. And, out of all Power Ranger villains, her storyline and her, how she is as a Power Rangers villain is absolutely one of the most easiest easy picking villains to define her character and summarize about. Whereas other villains in Power Rangers, you see, that's one of the reasons why people look at me as that Lost Galaxy expert, because it's just, there's something about Lost Galaxy that I just like, because there's something about it that's just an easy picking season to summarize and talk about. That's one of the reasons why I talked about Lost Galaxy so much, because there's a lot of things they did that were just so memorable. But I feel like with these fan films I've been doing, how was I going to top that? I had to take some influence from last year's Power Rangers movie with Rita stalking Trini. And, but, you know, now here's the thing. Here's the thing. When we had last year's Power Rangers movie, and thinking about that post I did on Instagram, now you see, remember when we had last year's Power Rangers film that Saban put out last year that I know many of you like. I did posted something not so long ago last year. I did posted an image in my on my Instagram for this stuff, where I did a post where I was like, you know, making something for fun, like, oh, Trinkina hates 2017 Rita ripping her style. And somehow, believe it or not, Trinkina herself, Amy Roll, saw my Instagram post. She commented, and she was not happy what I posted about it. It was because maybe I should have never made, and some of us should have never made comparisons to her character to Elizabeth Banks' Rita, because, you see, she got on me about that, because I should have never started that, because we'll talk about Elvira later. But anyway, but it's just, you know, I should have never made a reference to her, you know, her character with Elizabeth Banks' character of Rita Repulsa from last year's Power Rangers film. And she got so mad, and I commented to her that I was just joking around. This is for fun, and then she got upset about it. See, I think that's where my Trinkina fatigue started to come to play. That's why when I finished up this movie last year, that's when I'm like, I'm at the point where I hate Trinkina just now. I mean, as much as I liked her as a villain as a kid, and even up to now, but it's just thinking about why I posted that when last year's movie was coming out, because people, well, I was not the only one that was making comparisons of Trinkina to Elizabeth Banks' Rita. Several other people were doing it too, because remember when we had those image scans of Elizabeth Banks' Rita when the Power Rangers reboot was coming out a year ahead from when we got all those reveals of the costumes and Zords and cast and stuff in 2016, while I was still doing this film in its first year of shooting in production. I mean, when we got those scans of the stuff that was going to be in Saban's reboot, albeit looking back, all of it sucked. But to be honest, you know, I remember I've been hearing people saying that Elizabeth Banks' Rita, you know, by the design reminds us of, you know, reminds someone of Trinkina. Because why do you think it's a no-duh that Trinkina had two green costumes? Her armored form, where she couldn't move in much, and then her mutant form for the Lost Galaxy finale. So go figure. And see, I think that's why I guess I should have never made that post, and I think that's one of the reasons why I don't want to follow Amy Roll on Instagram or follow anything about her time as Trinkina, because, you know, if you follow Amy Roll on Instagram, she's only mostly like in character when it comes to her, because yeah, Trinkina, she brought that character to life in Power Rangers. No one else did. Not even her stand-in actress in Lightspeed rescued for that team-up, which I understand that it's been over 19 years since that team-up, and I need to get over that, because I didn't get over it when I started doing this fan film and been developing it. I really wasn't. because I was really having some difficult times accepting why she didn't come back, and because knowing that a lot of fans loved her depiction of the character and her her definitive portrayal, because she wanted to be bad to the bone like her father, according to, well, of course, all history of Power Rangers. But this alternate universe fan film, I just wanted to play Trinkina off similar, because you see, my goal was to not make this Trinkina for this fan film be a complete exact copy of Amy's Trinkina. This Trinkina that I did here, or if I do her again for other future Lost Galaxy fan films, is to not make her exactly too much like her character, her portrayal of the character. Because if I get any other actresses likenesses in the future, or anyone in the future at all, I don't want any woman to come off playing the exact same character of Trinkina that Amy played in Lost Galaxy, even though the only prominent portrayal of Trinkina in Power Rangers is Amy Roll's Trinkina, because I know that she's the only woman to play Trinkina, and there will be no other Trinkina besides her. And I know I seem to make it as though I wanted to do a new take on her and a new portrayal of her. I just didn't want to do the exact same character completely, because you see, if I'm going to do a reboot, remake, reimagining of Lost Galaxy, I don't want this to be exactly I don't want the characters come off exactly the same. Otherwise, it feels as though it just defeats the iconography of who played that character first. And I don't want to say, I'm not going to say I want the fans of hers to come to my fan base of her character. That doesn't work that way. If people like Amy's Trinkina, they like her. But I have zero fans of my portrayal of the character.
I'm telling you, I absolutely at this point where I really hate Trinkina. She doesn't know what she's dealing with.
You should have let her get involved in you.
I suppose you're right. I'm telling you, she's trying to know our identities of being Power Rangers. That's the problem. And besides, why she wants to know everything about us? She probably knows by our colors.
Well, the secret is safe. Yeah. And thanks for walking me back home.
Yeah, don't mention it. Let me walk you home, jumps up. Stalks me again. Hope she better not be around, I swear to God.
Don't worry about it. See you later, honey bunny.
What did you say?
Honey Bunny. Oh god, I mean, why am I slipping those references from my original attempt at this fan film now? Just why? In 2018, 2017, why? Just why? This scene was also a reshoot of what I did in 2016 when I was going through some troubled filming in 2016. And the difference between this version of the scene versus what I did before the reshoots, the original scene had Trinkina still in her Ursula Hirschman get up, in her civilian form, stalking Tony, and then asking him a bunch of questions, and then accusing him of stalking and giving him the restraining order stuff, when he didn't even do a damn thing about it. But in this version, the final version of the scene, this scene is different from what I did originally. Domestic violence can happen to anyone, whether regardless if it's a man or a woman, but but really, see, that's one of the reasons why I decided for this final cut, I had decided to play things, safe and wipe the slate clean during when I did the reshoots late last year, making Power Rangers Lost Galaxy 2, and I didn't want to copy a lot of what happened to me between that pinpoint in my life, because I was in the worst hell of my life between the last of 2015 and all of 2016, because in 2016 when I did this film in its first year of filming, I was beating myself up over what happened to me in real life that I can't speak of much thoroughly, but just bring up smallly in reference, because I really didn't want to copy a lot of what happened to myself in real life. Because you see, that's the thing when you do fan fiction. When you self-insert what happened to you, or while you're writing your fanfic of whatever franchise you're part of, whether if you're doing a Harry Potter fanfic, you got to self-insert yourself. Or if you're writing a Hobbit fanfic and you're self-inserting yourself. Whether if you're writing a Star Wars fanfic and you're self-inserting yourself. Heck, even especially with the Sonic the Hedgehog fandom. You write a Sonic fanfic, you do a self-insert yourself. Oh wait, we got Sonichu with Chris Chan. Oh yeah, that's right. Chris Chan is Sonichu. But again, that's the AMC movie theater. That's at Gaithersburg at the Rio when I did that cinematography shot there. I only filmed this scene for a brief second, for this movie, and I had the background of that the Rio Center. Over at Washington Grove for my first Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan film, only a stock image of it behind a sunset that I had a picture of for so long, since 2010. Now, this Megazord battle is just basically, you guessed it, from the webisodes again, but this time with different music and new footage, in between shots with the other Rangers in the footage. Because if you watch the episode, the webisode that you're seeing this was from, but edited with different music and cuts, was from the webisode The Power of Six, and it's on my YouTube channel. But this is different. I wanted to make this cut different. Of this Megazord fight with, Megazord, Galaxy Megazord and Torozord versus DVI's Megazord, which was just basically the black and gold T-Rex Zord and the Terra Charge Megazord from Power Rangers Dino Charge. Because you see, once again, I just didn't want to have Centaurus and Stratoforce Megazords evil again. Because, again, I just didn't want to copy a lot from Lost Galaxy again. So that's why I had to defer from what was already in Lost Galaxy, but do it different. So the Centaurus and Stratoforce Megazords are in this movie, but you'll see when I get around that point in the commentary. But I just wanted to use the Dino Charge Megazords because for any kid who watches Power Rangers right now on Nickelodeon, and especially Power Rangers Dino Charge, but even though right now it's Super Ninja still at the even though I'm not talking about Power Rangers in general anymore, but just only my thing here, Power Rangers. And I just wanted to, please the kids of this generation for seeing the Dino Charge Zords in this film, even though the film has a bunch of profanity. What parents around here watching my videos or not hears me cussing, and then, hearing this, any of these kids watch this thing I'm doing, and then they hear me cussing, and I'm like, no, that's not appropriate. It can't be doing it around the kids, can't be doing it around sensitive adults, adults who don't like profanity and that kind of bad language. I understand certain audiences don't like that kind of cussing. But I gotta understand Power Rangers is for kids, but I don't want to play it down like that because, again, the franchise, like I've discussed in my podcasts and stuff until I deleted them, I was complaining and whining, and just that's one of the reasons why I haven't gotten anywhere in the fandom and on YouTube, and what I should be doing with my life personally outside of it, my personal life outside of it. That I've been doing nothing but complaining and whining and groaning and such about the Neo Saban era, and just realizing that, I guess maybe that's one of the reasons why people look at me like, oh, you're no Power Rangers fan. All you do is you're just some fan who just loves to complain and nitpick about what Saban is doing. Well, at the time of this, I decided to not do none of that no more. And I said it before in my last podcast about Power Morphicon 6 that just happened this year. because I just didn't want to keep on complaining about Power Rangers. I think with Hasbro owning Power Rangers now, I should just let Power Rangers play out how it is now compared to back when, when Saban got it back from Disney 8 years ago, and then Samurai happened and Megaforce. I just didn't want to keep doing this to myself for the rest of my life as a fan. That's why I want to focus on, on this stuff again and just let the show play out on its own. I think I've done enough bitching and complaining for the last 7 years in the fandom, and like I said in that video, I did enough complaining and it just made me sound like a complete butthurt man-child. I guess I may call myself a man-child in general, in theory, because I was doing so much complaining and whining and knowing I can see it will be worse if I see myself in my 30s still acting like a butthurt Power Ranger fanboy, complaining about if I see anything like this with Hasbro in the future with Beast Morphers and up, and they do something like that, like Neo Saban, then I will be just like, oh god, I think people will just want me to get rid of for good.
I cannot believe this, man. What was going on in your head? We lost the Megazord fight.
That was also from when I did the Tony and Ursula subplot, which took away most of the film and all the good stuff. That's why I had to keep Tony silent in this cut compared to what happened in my original cut of the film. Just cut straight to the point with Tony and Siri at her place, which is based on an apartment to set up that set piece, where she would be if she lived in an apartment and she couldn't afford a house. And then the way the scenery is a bit little inconsistent. So now I know I did ripped off this scene from The Dark Knight. That scene in The Dark Knight when after Batman and Harvey Dent had that talk about the Joker's whereabouts, and the whole, Rachel and Bruce were having to talk about, if, Batman doesn't surrender, Bruce doesn't reveal to everyone that, Batman, that he's Batman, and Batman doesn't surrender, everybody in Gotham dies part. This is the scene, I guess this is one scene I ripped off from The Dark Knight, but theoretically, if you dissect my entire fan film of this is basically The Dark Knight Rises of Power Rangers fan films, because you can tell for beat that this fan film, minus the whole, Red Ranger going broke, has no money and all that stuff, crap. I did partly base this movie in inspiration from The Dark Knight Rises, but with Power Rangers. When I reworked it, Rise of Trakeena again in 2014, that was my plan, to make this new version of that fan film like that instead of G.I. Joe. Because G.I. Joe was 9 years ago. That's gone. And keeping up to date with today's superhero movies, and even before the Avengers, or around the Avengers and Amazing Spider-Man and all that, The Dark Knight Rises was one of those movies that I was inspired to make. But of course, I just wanted to keep this consistently, to make it feel like this film belongs in the Power Rangers universe, but in a separate alternate universe from what already happened in Lost Galaxy and all of Power Rangers continuity. Now, here at this point where we are now, at the timestamp of 1 hour, 12 minutes, and 20 seconds, commentary time, if you're following this, VillaMax and Trinkina have an argument, and Trinkina ousts VillaMax and, bars him and Kegler off her ship. Because this is where, the manipulation that Deviant was ploying on Trinkina is what's, vindicating her in manipulation to feel as though that despite what the Rangers did to Scorpius, since, again, I know in this version I didn't want to make Scorpius referred to as Trinkina's father and her referred to as his daughter, like we all know from the characters from the source material, and VillaMax being a father figure to Trinkina. Instead, I just made VillaMax just this stock generic servant general of hers, and not like a father figure to her, because I just wanted to keep the TV characters separate from my movie versions of the characters, And that is what I planned on doing, because just, you know, for you guys to understand what I was trying to do for these last 2 movies now, I just didn't want to copy a lot of stuff that you guys know of the characters and the lore, much like I have. I just want to do something to be played out differently from what we already had. That's what I was trying to tell you even from the beginning of the commentary. And something I probably didn't say when I did my audio commentary for my first Power Rangers Lost Galaxy movie. And it shows, because, you know, I liked how Trinkina was on the TV show, but this fan film, I just wanted to play her off like she's someone that she's like the worst reckoning in the galaxy. I mean, sure, we saw what Trinkina was capable of on the TV series, but I wanted to make Trinkina in this different from what we already saw of her on the TV show, and not, you know, see me copy all that again, just because, you know, if this is going to be like almost an adaptation, you know, then I should have just been more faithful with the material when I had the chance. And instead I wanted to say, fuck it, I just want to do my own thing. And that's one of the reasons why I didn't do what I was, you know, as a request from the fans and what they want, and what they thought, and what they want to see this happen in the film, what they wanted to see in the film. Because it seemed as though I was doing this film mostly for myself, and I know that I was being too much of an asshole for these last couple of years in the fandom. You know, acting like I don't want to listen to the fans. I don't want to do what the fans want me to do to make my Lost Galaxy movies any better. And you see, this resulted to that problem.
And another thing, I have no heart, and you can't say otherwise. And I have no soul. And for such insolence, I want you and Tekla, Uncle Tekla, to get off my ship. You're done.
Fine, I'll be on tour adventure if you need me.
Tomorrow, Red Ranger, you will be mine. And when you do tomorrow, you will prepare for the Wrath of Trakeena. And I will promise you this.
So here's the thing. I mean, like I said earlier, I just didn't want to copy a lot of what she said and done, you know, that Amy did with the character nearly 20 years ago. And I just wanted to do my own take on her storyline, but, you know, remove some things that made her character what she was, that how Saban and them did the characters. Because when I was inspired to do this thing many years ago, when I started the Power Rangers fandom and joined it in 2010, but through Ranger Wiki and then several other places that where many Power Ranger fans rejoice, especially YouTube, I really wanted to do my own take of Lost Galaxy to see if anyone would be interested, because I just felt that when I made it clear that I didn't want to copy a lot about Lost Galaxy, I just wanted to do my own take of it and not copy, like I said, scene for scene, beat for beat, and make it a complete pointless remake of the season, but with different characters, and then they go through the same storylines as the characters themselves. And I feel that with a legacy villain like Trinkina, I guess I kind of partly ruined her character in a way. I'll get to that nearer into the end. But I feel as though that bringing back these villains that actually exist in Prime Power Rangers continuity and brought into this alternate universe thing, but portrayed totally vastly different. I just didn't want to do, like I said again, I just didn't want to do the same character. I just wanted to do a version of Trinkina that I don't think no Power Rangers fan has ever seen been played out before. And I wanted to see her to be this, you know, cold and empty and, you know, vicious and intimidating and threatening, and make her more of a bigger threat than she was on the TV show. So that's what I was trying to do with this fan film, was to make her more of a threat as opposed to how she really was. Now, yeah, in the TV show, the Rangers were aware of her her retaliation and campaign against them for what they did to her dad, but not calling Scorpius her dad in this version, because you know how I am. I do not like spoiled, stuck-up daddy's girls. I really don't. I've said this before, and I didn't want to make Trinkina that same character to start the movie off, or any way of any means. Even when I did the webisodes earlier, I just didn't want to portray Trinkina as that spoiled, stuck-up character. Later became the warrior, the evil warrior, you know, of the galaxy. She would be later in such now, because, well, again, that was her character on the TV show. You see, I have to defer this version of Power Rangers Lost Galaxy from the Power Rangers Lost Galaxy that a lot of us Power Ranger fans know, because I've been trying to say this. I've been saying this for a long time. I know a lot of people are like, why, I bet you some of you in the comments will be like, you know, if this is a fan film based on their season, why couldn't you make it act like that? You know, people would say something like that, because of course I know maybe what I should have did was come up with my own Power Ranger series by name and not copy the same name of a Power Ranger series that already exists in canon, because I think that's probably why a lot of you guys were in when you saw and heard about my fan films a little bit, for some of you out there, and heard about the characters and heard about the things I was doing with Lost Galaxy. You know, if the characters were the same names as Leo, Damon, Kai, Maya, Kendricks / Corone, and Mike, then this would have been the Power Rangers Lost Galaxy you guys grew up with 19 to 20 years ago. But sadly, with the likenesses of the following actors like Wes Bentley, Don Cheadle, Krista Milioti, Bridget Regan, etc., they could have been the Rangers, representing the Rangers that you know in prime continuity. And I know that's why a lot of you guys were in droves, in which you did, because I know that for a fact I did have a lot of you Power Ranger fans, and I apologize for that in droves. It's I just didn't want to do the same portrayals of how the characters were. Like, for example, Damon being that greased up mechanic who complains about being a decoy during certain fights, or being the playful by nature Kai, the security guard who's stricken by the books, Kendricks, the scientist, such, etc. And as for Trinkina, I just didn't want to play her off like what she was in all Power Rangers continuity, because this is an alternate universe. I just didn't want to do her the exact same way, but retain the same aesthetic of her partly, but just didn't want to play her off that way. And I just made it clear, because I just didn't want to do that same, character. Well, maybe if I were to do my own female villain for this universe, not based on Trinkina, then she would have been like the daughter of Trinkina or something like that. And I don't know what to call her. Like I'm bad with coming up with original names, like Scaracrina or something like that, or Darskrina or some name like that, if she was the daughter of Trinkina or something, or Trillia or something, whatever. Now, the conversation between Tony and Siri, this was reshot for the final cut of the film. The original version of the scene was very long, and I had to reshoot this late last year, because when I was filming the movie originally in March, starting in March and April of 2016, this scene here was very long when I originally shot it, how it was originally shot. But in the reshoots, I had to make it quick to the point. Well, there were two different versions of this during the reshoots. There was a version of it where the discussion was a little minimal, and here for the final cut, this is where they had to, expand upon their differences and stuff like that. And since Siri was lacking some character development, there is at least some tidbits of her and about her. You can barely, get a gauge of her personality, what kind of character I made her to be. I made her to be, anxious and quivery and nervous and bottled up, a little bit emotionally and timid, because, she would become she would be a strong female character later on. I just didn't want to play her off as that strong female, archetype like we got in today's movies, especially superhero movies now, but it's in television shows. But I wanted to make her come off as that anxious, nervous, socially awkward girl, and then later on she would take on while she's the Pink Ranger, she would be, she can get over her fear of bugs and stuff over time later on. But just, because how I showed her off, especially in this scene, particularly here, where we have barely any music in the background during the talking. So that's why there were times in this movie where I did some quiet scenes, and as well as the stubble scenes where there's talking and there's the music lowered down a bit. And then I don't know why on earth I would come up with the word, bring up the word hussy. Because, like as if the pinpoint as though that my OC Pink Ranger #2 was a tramp or a skank or a prostitute. Now that's something I would not have for a Pink Ranger, would I? Because you see, Power Rangers is about friendship, teamwork, positivity, heart of the cards, blah blah blah. You see, I just didn't do that here. Because I think one of the reasons why I kind of made these characters, somewhat dark and bland was because, you see, ever since when that Power/Rangers short film came out a couple years ago, it made me feel as though that film made me think this is what Power Rangers should be to us. I understand it. Adi Shankar, Joseph Kahn, and them wanted to do an R-rated, edgier, hardcore edgelord version of the Power Rangers because that's what some of you guys in your inner geek as 30-something, 20-something adults wanted. This is like something we wanted, and we wanted a badass, hardcore Power Rangers. But you see, again, that R-rated short film, which I'm not still calling a fan film as opposed to mine, the person who made it is not an actual fan. Although the person who produced it, claims, that he knows what he was doing, like he knows better than anybody else, like, and that's why I didn't like Power/Rangers. And I think that despite my paralyzed exposure to that short film as a Power Rangers fan, that is why I saw Power Rangers in a much negative light. Because when the film premiered, I realized that you think this is how Power Rangers should be. I mean, yeah, even though that was something that Hollywood would produce, take something that's for children and then make it dark and gritty and hardcore and, to appease the edgelord lovers out there. Because I get that. That's why it's just, let's face it, at this point, Power Rangers was always, and even still now, 25 years later. And by the way, I was recording this commentary for my fan film on the 25th anniversary of Power Rangers, August 28th of this year. And I realized that was the reason why they did that film. Because it just made me so mad. And then it made me feel like this is the kind of thing I want to do to Lost Galaxy, is do a Power Rangers Lost Galaxy partly PG-13, partly R-rated film where there's darkness and there is hardly any of the fun factor and the charm of Power Rangers in it. Now, the first half of this fan film, let's face it, it feels less like Power Rangers, more like this is like the kind of drama and characterization I would have if I would do this for any other kind of movie not based on pre-existing intellectual property. But once you get to the second half, especially when we get to the second and Megazord fight and so forth, then the rest of the movie feels like a traditional Power Rangers fair. But at this point here, this is where it barely feels like Power Rangers. It's kind of like RPM. RPM, when that started, I mean, we all know RPM. When RPM started, it started off less frequently like Power Rangers. We were delving into character backstories for like Summer, Dr. K, Ziggy, and so forth. And then we had the overall premise of the end of the world by a computer virus that Dr. K started, and several other stuff. And then by the time we got to the second half of that, then the rest of the series, then the rest of RPM felt like a very traditional Power Ranger season, because it was written because the second half was consulted and written by the guy who knows the books of traditional Power Rangers writing. And of course, what I try to do here is, well, this is where the movie comes off being serious, because you see, unlike my last Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan film, I wanted to somewhat, kind of to a degree, raise the stakes. Because when I started this film off and brought Trinkina into the film 34 minutes into the film later, I guess she came off a bit serious. I wanted to make her serious, but then but wait until you get to the second half when we get to it. I had her come off as some over-the-top, cornball, homage to some gothic female character with the big boobs that I aforementioned that my Yellow Ranger said on screen according to the video, if you heard it in the audio. And, really, I know that for a fact I wanted to play her off like that because, well, of course, that's something that Trinkina would not be, would she? No, she wouldn't. And, yeah, because it's just something, man. Because when I did this movie, it was, how was I going to execute her character in film? And I didn't want her to come off as that character who was always like, those Power Rangers will pay for the destroy my father, thing. Again, that was the TV show. What I'm doing here is to defer from the source material of the show, not to have it resemble a lot of it because, well, nostalgia. And I just wanted to have it separate from the source material because of the nostalgia factor. Because if I, like, for example, if I played a part of my fan film where, when the Rangers do something epic and awesome, like some of the Megazords and stuff, the theme song, the Power Rangers Lost Galaxy theme song would play in the background. Now, as for the scene here where Trinkina and the Stingwingers are marching to ready their first attack on Terra Venture, now this was the most enormous big scene in the film that I shot in my bedroom back in October of 2016. Trinkina and the Stingwingers behind her. Well, that scene was shot out of order, but in the reshoots, when I reshot the scene where the Rangers were looking at, reacting to, Trinkina's arrival on Terra Venture. Now, this scene here, and as well as the next one that follows and connected to this, this had to be reshot because the dialogue for this scene here, especially where she blasted the Rangers out of nowhere from her ship, was very long. So that's why for the reshoots I had to tone down all the prolonged dialogue and exposition down and get straight to the point, because that was during the original production stages of this film from 2 years ago.
Come on, guys. We need to get back in our feet.
And thus, the Wrath of Trakeena has begun.
What the? Oh shit, it's her. Trinkina. I should have known.
Look what we have here. I'm not here for the rest of you. I just want the Red Ranger and the Red Ranger alone. You should consider taking all of this down. Is that what you want?
Why do you want me?
I can't
Even during the editing process, I always thought that part was kind of funny. So yeah, I mean, it was. I just wanted to make this a serious film, even though you're going to have some bits of the goofiness of Power Rangers, but I think looking back, due to the amount of repeat viewings that I've done for myself before I release it to all you fans, to the public, I just felt that, considering my last fan film sucked, I wanted to make this more serious than the last one. Although I had to make it less silly and more serious, and I think that's another thing that probably hurt this fan film, was I was taking this movie too seriously. Because I think it was because of the response I had from, the haters and the trolls that I've encountered in 2014 and 13 when I did my first Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan film. And when they criticized, when I had like one commenter that I don't think really is a fan, when he said that the fan film was coming off like South Park with Power Rangers, and then of course the people I saw responses about my first fan film on Ranger Board. Oh God, Ranger Board. And even in their recent fan film threads from 2016, 17, and this year, not a single person even mentioned Wrath of Trakeena. They just been mentioning that Power Rangers Unworthy fan film that just came out, that Dino Mega Charge fan film. So far, not a single mention of my fan film, because I guess nobody wants to waste time seeing me with this stuff. And yeah, and then once again, doing exactly what I did last time, but this time around I decided to minimize the video game footage, especially the Soul Calibur fight footage. Gameplay recorded footage is kind of repetitive, because knowing Soul Calibur with the character created mods, let's face it, with the same dialogues and move sets, it's repetitive. Just wait until when Soul Calibur 6 comes out. God forbid. Because really, I just felt that, considering that my last movie just didn't win anyone over, and how I did things in that, and even what I did now, I wanted to do more stuff, more original fight stuff and less dependence on that gameplay stuff, because I knew where the criticism about that was coming from, according to those guys on Ranger Board, from their fan film thread from dated post to when I released my first fan film in November of 4 years ago. And here I am, 2018, and I just didn't want to copy. What I'm trying to say here, I just didn't want to promote Power Rangers Lost Galaxy: The Wrath of Trakeena and hype the film up, and set some fans up for disappointment. That's why when I did those teaser trailers for the fan film, this one actually, not the one I did before that looked delayed, according to those haters crap, I did do those teaser trailers to set up some hype without showing off any of the so-called crappy paper doll footage, because I didn't want those jerkwads or so in the comments anywhere around lurking in the fandom on YouTube bitching out on me because I'm doing another, yet again, Lost Galaxy fan film with these dolls I made of mount board and stuff, 3D, the printed imagery from off of what I print out off the internet, off the computer, and onto the puppets and stuff for costumes and actor heads if they were the characters. I just didn't want to go with that at all, because I just don't know how they would feel just seeing this again 4 years later, but with a totally different story and with some improvements. And I think I have listened to some of those haters as criticisms on my last movie that I had to improve on this movie. Now, one of them, they probably did mention that I could have done more outdoor stuff, and I did that in this movie. Because last movie I did less outdoor, more indoor, plus the video game footage in between the shots, which made things a lot more schizophrenic. And that's why my brother didn't want nothing to do with these Power Ranger fan films of mine. And I can understand, that's him. If you didn't want nothing to do with it, that's okay. But I guess maybe what I've been doing with these movies were it just wasn't how I wanted them to be. I guess maybe it was because one of the reasons why this and the last movie, in my mind as a director and such of this failed, I was the reason why these movies didn't come out well. These movies didn't turn out and came out well during the editing process and finalization process, because I was worried about how people would think of me and think of this, even though nobody has ever heard of me before or seen this before, because they think it's not really what they expected, and that's why I kind of failed in a way. Because maybe if I were to do these movies, you know, through funding from, you know, via like Kickstarter, oh wait, that's the guy, the you know, MMPR guy, or Indiegogo, or even Patreon. You know, since I have a Patreon account, but I decided not to do these movies for money, because back when Saban had Power Rangers, I mean, when Saban had Power Rangers, you know, back, and then when he and this company of Saban Brands heard that a lot of us, you know, fans who wanted to make Power Ranger fan films, especially, you know, trying to make it like in the vein of Hollywood movies, but that was back when Saban was in process of developing a Power Rangers movie for the fans overall, because I know fan films are okay, but then of course when talks about you know, his movie came along, you know, the 2017 that would later become of the 2017 reboot that you guys still love, that you wish had a sequel by now. Saban wanted to shut us fans down for making these kind of fan films, and I was this close to having my stuff of it shut down, even though I still got a troll who just, you know. Now, for whoever keeps disliking my videos every time I upload a new video, and it's that one disliker, I understand how YouTube works on that. If you really hate my content so much, every time I upload a new video and you keep disliking it, if you hate my content, why do you still watch my stuff? You just watch my stuff, press dislike, and walk away. I mean, I know who it is. I know who the troll is, because I'm not interacting with that troll, but that guy, whoever that is, needs to get a life. Seriously. Those crickets in the tree about the hurricanes. Yeah.
What are you guys doing in my house?
That I want to know. I'll catch up with you guys later. And, where's the door?
Door's that way.
Thank you.
I don't feel right.
Me neither.
My stomach hurts.
Mine hurts worse.
I'll get it. May I help you?
Hi, is Tony Marshall with you?
No, but someone else?
Mind if I come in?
You know, I can't believe I've done about like 3 or 4 versions of this scene where Chris meets Siri and Will about Tony's whereabouts and what happened to them. You know, this was reshot like 3 or 4 times and also edited in different ways during the production of this film. This was this scene here, what I'm talking about, when Chris comes in Siri's house, where Will and Siri is after the battle with Trinkina and after they got knocked out, and when Tony was taken captured. This was done like 3 or 4 times within 2 years of production, because some of the versions of these scenes, well, actually the entire movie, actually most of it was mostly all unscripted, because let's face it, I just wanted to get this movie done. I've been doing this fan film project for so long as I can remember, and I just wanted to get it done because I've been doing this particular fan film of Rise/Wrath of Trakeena for 8 years of development and production hell, and I just want to get it over with. I just wanted to get it done, and that's why the scene took forever. No, that's why this movie in general just took forever to get, made, because again, life and how things got in the way of that, and I just couldn't take it anymore. And a little bit of that Easter egg sound effect that I had to cut for a short, small brief, that Deshi Basara sound from The Dark Knight Rises. Well, go ahead, Warner Brothers. Sue me. Now, you can easily see how creepingly evil I made Trinkina in this fan film. And you see, the portrayal of her is extremely vastly different. And the way how she comes off, the way how I portrayed her in this film. And I guess maybe the Trinkina I did in this fan film of Power Rangers Lost Galaxy is a hybrid of some other Power Ranger villainesses that exist with this kind of portrayal. But none of the female villains we've had in this franchise were as serious and creepy like this. But again, the only exception is, again, Elizabeth Banks' Rita from last year's Power Rangers film is, Rita Repulsa. And I partly did, even a year and a half before that movie came out, and even after, when I did the reshoots of this, I had to inspire this version of Trinkina after Elizabeth Banks' Rita. Okay, go ahead, Amy. Go ahead, say what you want. And when I say about this again on Instagram, and block me on Instagram because I said, your Trinkina, your character dislikes Rita, from Elizabeth Banks, like I did again. But again, I just wanted to do a Trinkina that just, to be separate from Amy's portrayal, and that's what I was trying to do. But then when we get to the second half, then this is where I was trying too hard to be like her, and I think this is what hurted this fan film also, was Trinkina's portrayal. And I've stated this in my notes, post the release of this movie. I really was, later on during the second half of this movie, was trying to make her too much like her, her portrayal of the character. So I have to do a different portrayal of her character. One that, like I said earlier, that no other Power Rangers fan has seen before. Whether if it's in a fan film or by reading someone's fanfic of Lost Galaxy, where Trinkina, even if she has to be played the same type of character. See, another thing I ripped off from last year's Power Rangers movie. She, this time it's with the Pink Ranger. We saw, now it's both the girls getting terrorized by Trinkina. Actually, I just wanted Trinkina to terrorize the Rangers and then attack them and bully them and then say things like, I'm going to, rip your heart out and stuff like that. Just being creepy. And I think maybe the mannerisms of my directing style of this movie came off a bit creepy too. To some people, if you find this uncomfortable, then you don't have to watch this anymore, because despite that, it's just me with the camera, the puppets, and being on location, or even in my own room doing the work with the green screen behind me and stuff. I get that, because I guess some people just don't seem to think, some people don't seem to think that what I was doing was believable or trying to win anyone over. So that's one of the reasons why I felt like I kind of failed in a way. And that's the truth.
Why did she take off? Siri? Anybody? Where she took off to?
That Go-Go Power Rangers communicator beep was from my Legacy Power Morpher that I had from Toys R Us. And I still got it. It was actually the movie edition White Ranger Legacy Morpher. Yeah, well, considering to assure the fans that this is a Power Rangers fan film, I didn't want people to click on this fan film and think this was something else with Power Rangers slapped to it, much like that, again, that Power/Rangers film. So, just for that brief moment.
Only have one ranger gone. Need to do the other four. I want the pink ranger. Oh God, not again.
Leave her alone.
Seems like you didn't learn your lesson from last time. I have no rules.
Nor does Heath Ledger's Joker. I just wanted to make Trinkina hardcore than the TV character. So, and yeah, I just didn't want her to be that character. And that is how your mother became a Power Ranger. Yeah, I know. I mean, when I did a fan casting of who should be this Ranger and that Ranger for this thing, I wanted to see what it was like if when I did the puppets and when I did the actor likenesses for the new characters, I wanted to see what it was like seeing Kristen Miliotti's face slapped to that Pink Ranger. Considering I saw the final season of How I Met Your Mother. And the stuff she was also into, like that one episode of the season 5 premiere of 30 Rock, and the second season of Fargo, and even I know I haven't got around watching Black Mirror season 4, particularly the USS Callister episode. I'll get around watching that episode of Black Mirror specifically for Kristen Miliotti's appearance, just for that. Oh, as for those who may not know, like I said in my vlog about the fan film, you guys are wondering about the Kamen Rider Power Ranger thing in this film. Now, the Shadow Knight costume is basically just a reuse of the Wing Knight costume from Kamen Rider Dragon Knight. If Forever Red and Power Rangers Wild Force can utilize, reuse the Beetleborg costumes for the 10th anniversary episode of Power Rangers with the Red Rangers versus the Beetleborgs, why not me reusing a Kamen Rider costume from a show that aired 10 years after Lost Galaxy, but during the run of RPM? God, my fight scenes suck. No, literally, they suck. Seriously. I mean, it seems like, see, that's one of the reasons why I've been relying on video game, footage that I recorded from the TV. Now, next movie, I hope if I remind myself next time if I'm going to record video game footage like this with my, instead of filming it with the camera in front of the TV and all that, I need to get a game capture device to record that gameplay footage already while I'm already playing. And then once I'm done recording the footage, then use the official recorded footage to blend in with my actual footage, because filming what was already shot in front of a TV screen does make it look kind of crappy in a way. Really crappy. This is why I just want to wait until when Soul Calibur 6 comes out. Because let's face it, Soul Calibur 5, in terms of the voice acting and stuff, especially when you have character creation, it's very repetitive. It's really repetitive. Okay, so apparently, like I said in my vlog, the only villains in Lost Galaxy that were exactly like their TV Prime Universe counterparts is Deviant and VillaMax. Everybody else is basically their own characters. Trinkina especially. And, again, the fan film basically, okay, the film is based on the following episodes when Trinkina became the main villain of Lost Galaxy. I did base the fan film off Heir to the Throne and An Evil Game. Little bits of Easter eggs to other episodes about her, like Stolen Beauty and Journey's End. But the entire fan film is completely original to a degree because of where it takes place. And I just didn't want to tell the same exact story of each episode and then recreate those scenes just because I gotta make it as a love letter to all the Lost Galaxy fans out there in the Power Rangers fandom, and especially making Easter egg nods and homages and callbacks to some episodes, especially like this one classic bit that I paid homage to.
Never mess with Trinkina.
And I'm going to regret that. Even though, yeah, it's a callback to, see, this is why I was doing this movie out of nostalgia. But for all the wrong reasons. No offense. I was doing this movie out of nostalgia for all the wrong reasons. For no apparent reason why. Well, I guess there is a reason why, but it's just... I just been so passionate about the things they did, but I just can't keep relying on that so much. Now, this scene here, that was done in 2016. This scene here at this park, this was around... Okay, now, I did film the movie in Rockville. This part here, this was all Rockville. This was at the King Farm community at the park. This was in 2000. This was around in October 2016. This was back when production was still troubling. So I had the mishmash. Once I was doing all the editing and putting the movie together, I had to combine some footage that I still had from 2016 that I filmed for this with the footage I had shot from last year, and then married the two footages together so it can be, connected. Because bad enough, like I said earlier, the movie during its production in year one, since it only took me 2 years to film this, the first year of filming was a nightmare and it was a mess. So that's why I had to make up for a lot of stuff during reshoots and such of all of 2017. So I had to reshoot everything in 2017 while still retaining some footage that I thought looked okay in 2016. But even though despite some continuity differences of how the puppets look from footages by the filming dates when I was filming on schedule and off schedule, and that from there. In between that, there was a scene where the Rangers would meet someone that would help them figure out, about the mythos of the villain factions in this continuity about Scorpius and Metarex. But I cut that scene because of time reasons, because that's what was holding this movie back. Also, that's why I had to cut it back. And I had to cut that scene where they were going to that cathedral because of time reasons. So that's why I felt 3 hours and 10 minutes or so was good enough for this movie, because this movie was already going on too long. So I felt 3 hours and 13 or 12 minutes was good enough for the audience. If you guys want to sit around for that long, 3 hours and 13, 14, 15 minutes. But again, this movie, I would have liked it if I did a 2 hour cut, so that way you guys would have, been invested for 2 hours of its runtime, even if the fan film is not supposed to be this necessarily long. But I did it because, well, let's face it, I wanted to do a longer fan film because, I acted like I was no better than no other Power Rangers fan when it came to doing fan films that should be shorter than longer. Because knowing fan films, fan films have to be, if you want your fan film to be seen in a contest, a fan film contest, the film has to be like about 5 to 10 minutes or 25 to 45 minutes. But I said, fuck that. I decided to do a fan film that would be in the vein of Hollywood movies, and because again, my dream was to make movies, and I guess that's one of the reasons why I called myself a so-called filmmaker for no reason why. Who knows what. And I wanted to be all action, wanted to be all blockbuster action, blockbuster kind of film with this, and knowing it's just me with video game footage, puppets, and random crap with it. And I think that's one of the reasons why this is not the kind of thing a lot of people want to see. And I can see why, but the explosions from the video games like Soul Calibur or Grand Theft Auto and Call of Duty. Last movie I had Call of Duty footage, but this is just all GTA with Saints Row 4 and Soul Calibur. But most of all the explosive big stuff, that was all Grand Theft Auto 5, and especially like the tank, the cops, and all these explosions I did. I mean, while I was playing GTA Online, and because again, I can't do this kind of shit in real life. This is only I can do in a video game, and then emulate that and put that, make it, marry the footages of my real life footage with the gameplay footage to make it like as though that the stuff was actually happening, just as an illusion of all this was already happening, while marrying the video game footage with my real world / puppet footage. That's how I did this stuff. And for those who were wondering why I did the video game footage, because again, when it came to the fight scenes, when fight scenes are executed, you see, with the puppets, despite that it's just only me doing all this and nobody else, I had to, not have a bunch of fight scenes with the puppets because, I know for those who've been seeing the shots with my hands and arms and the shots, most of the fights had to be utilized via Soul Calibur footage, gameplay footage using those character creations. Because why do you think since Soul Calibur 3 and even with the installments like Soul Calibur 4 and Soul Calibur 5, you can create your own characters and you can make Power Ranger-like characters or whatever as you like of your own preference in Soul Calibur 3, 4, or 5, or all three. And that's how I got inspired to do this kind of thing and put that into this film. Because after all, I'm a big Soul Calibur fan, and I figured, well, if it weren't for Soul Calibur 3 and the debut of the character creation feature, why do you think I would do something like this later on down the line, especially when I utilized Soul Calibur 4 and Soul Calibur 5 footages for these two movies here? But, and then mishmash the footages and takes and stuff like that down the lane and down the road. And this was, there were like multiple parks at King Farm when I did this in Rockville. There was a lot. This where Trinkina confronts the Rangers and holding the 4 remaining Rangers prisoner. This was done in December of 2017. This was during reshoots again, and or was it in November? I can't remember, but it was on one of those times because I can tell it was very cold outside when I did this scene here. And this was based on a scene that I had, in my forehead, not scripted, because I just had to do some role play as I went along because I didn't want to do, when you do a movie, you have to go by the script because, see, this is, again, another thing I never did as a filmmaker. Why couldn't I just do a lot of things scripted and not do a whole bunch of stuff unscripted? Because sometimes unscripted scenes will be like, let's say, well, depending on how it goes, out of context of what your movie's really about. So that's one of the reasons why I was being a little belligerent and lazy with these movies by just doing stuff unscripted and not going by a script, because I felt that I wouldn't have the time, because I felt like I wouldn't have the time to take the patience to script everything what I wanted to put into the film. But I felt that this scene was notoriously unscripted, as well as several other scenes later. Well, although the finale was scripted, but everything else is unscripted, especially this scene in particular, where like Trakeena bullies the Rangers and then keep interrogating them about the Red Ranger's existence, and you know, all that stuff and the insults and all that was all unscripted, because I really wanted, you know, just play this movie out as it goes along, because maybe I just didn't have the time to, you know, craft the script in fully whole. So that's one of the reasons why I mostly rather do stuff unscripted. And even when I would do some of those takes and, you know, do role play, because it's like role play, like what you do in Facebook groups. Like I've been doing in my Power Ranger Facebook groups with role play. We just make stuff up as we go along. Heck, even Power Rangers Hyperforce did it. So why do you think with Hyperforce, why do you think they did some role play as they go along? And well, even though they do follow partly a script, but it feels like most of the role play they do in that was like all, well, unscripted role play, you know, Power Rangers role play. So all right, let's talk about that product placement joke and gag in this film. It's not so obvious that, thinking back to last year's Power Rangers movie when they did it, when Saban and them did it, Lionsgate them did it. You know, that Krispy Kreme shit in last year's Power Rangers movie had me figured, okay, well, if Saban did Krispy Kreme in their little Power Ranger movie, my little Power Ranger movie gets Dunkin' Donuts. But this time, Trinkina goes after the Red Ranger and probably who knows what at the Dunkin' Donuts. Like, I don't know. But, you know, again, it's just, you know, and like I said in the vlog, why couldn't she go to like somewhere like a Starbucks or a Burger King and find the Red Ranger? But I chose Dunkin' Donuts because, again, if last year's movie did the Krispy Kreme thing, then maybe my movie would do Dunkin' Donuts as the polar opposite of the Krispy Kreme in Power Rangers, with Dunkin' Donuts in my Lost Galaxy fan film. So parts of the fan film, I was making fun of last year's Power Rangers movie, you know, jabbing and poking at that movie because, well, let's face it, that Krispy Kreme stuff, you know, just ruined that movie for me, and actually everything about that movie ruined that movie for me. And Krispy Kreme, well, again, if it weren't for last year's movie, I would have never gotten in the Krispy Kreme again and got their donuts again because, well, after all, as much as I love the Dunkin', I just really wanted to go back to Krispy Kreme. I mean, I wanted to get their donuts, and heck, my local Walmart here in Gaithersburg up in Germantown, they have Krispy Kreme donuts, but I'd rather get Krispy Kreme donuts at Walmart or anywhere than go up to Krispy Kreme itself, you know, since there's only one Krispy Kreme where I live at, but the donuts are sold anywhere you can think of, like in grocery stores like Safeway or Food Lion or even in Costco and Walmart. So, but it's just, again, last year's Power Rangers movie, when they did the Dunkin' Donuts thing, I mean, that's my movie, this. Krispy Kreme, Krispy Kreme. I mean, it just, that just messed me up. I mean, they just wouldn't shut up talking about Krispy Kreme. And, you know, especially with Liz Banks, Rita, Krispy Kreme, Zeo Crystal in the Krispy Kreme. But in this, I wanted Trinkina to stalk the Red Ranger, hunt him down at a Dunkin' Donuts somewhere. And because again, polar opposite of making fun of last year's movie a little bit, because again, the Krispy Kreme thing just got on my nerves. So much for the sticky bun thing with Ferguson, Mask Rider, Ferguson sticky buns. That's something.
Jesse, come on, get up. What happened to you? There's nothing. You guys gotta stop her. Will, did your diversion work? It did. I told her you were at a Dunkin' Donuts. Good. I'll make her think I was there. I heard what she said about the Megazord. We have no time until at least sundown tonight, because if she sets the eclipse, her adventure.
Now, part of the fan film, despite that this is the Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan film, I kind of did, since this year is the 25th anniversary of Power Rangers, I kind of did paid Easter eggs and homages and tributes to various episodes and iconic moments in Power Rangers. But despite that this fan film is based on Lost Galaxy and Trinkina is the title villain, this fan film is kind of like a small homage to the evil Green Ranger saga from Mighty Morphin, but with Lost Galaxy in it. But at least we don't have an evil Power Ranger like, oh, I made the Magna Defender like Tommy as the evil Green Ranger or anything. No. I decided maybe part of the film is like Greenwood Evil, but for Lost Galaxy. But you see, the thing is, Mighty Morphin, there was Greenwood Evil, White Light, Ninja Quest, Power Transfer, such. Lost Galaxy was Quasar Quest, The Lights of Orion, Magna Defender Saga, Trinkina's story arc of rise of her being a villain, the team up with the Space and Galaxy Rangers versus Psycho Rangers, such, etc. But if I were to do a Mighty Morphin fan film, this is how I would have done it. But instead, I decided to copy and pay a little bit of an homage and familiarity of Greenwood Evil, but with Lost Galaxy slapped over Mighty Morphin's iconic 5-part storyline, with Trinkina acting as like evil Green Ranger and Rita at the same time, and then having monsters like Crew Mummy and Chameleon, cock blocking the Rangers from trying to stop her from what she has to do to bring Terra Venture to pure darkness. So basically, and as for Chameleon, now the Chameleon puppet paper doll that I did of him is extremely on-screen accurate, so I did a pretty good job doing a screen accurate puppet of him, since I couldn't do an already printed version of him. So I had to take closely when I did the puppet of him to make it closely how he looked in Gingaman and Lost Galaxy. So I did you should give me props to that I did a good job recreating his design and his puppet. Since the monster costumes and their aesthetic was hard to recreate for the puppets, I just figured Chameleon was the very first Lost Galaxy monster I had to recreate to resemble what he looked like on screen in the TV show. And because supposedly, what's a little fan theory? What if Chameleon was an evil Power Ranger of himself, even though he's a copy monster who can replicate and copy the Rangers' moves and then abilities and weapons, and go Chameleon Megazord or Chameleon Quasar Saber, Chameleon Lights of Orion, Chameleon Red, etc. But because again, actually, out of all the Lost Galaxy monsters and out of all the monsters that Trinkina had during her reign and Wrath of Conquest against the Power Rangers, I think Chameleac was some of Trinkina's best monsters, believe it or not. And I thought, well, as an Easter egg to all the fans out there, I had to put Chameleac in this film for quite some time, for a little bit. I mean, I would love to film another scene with him in the movie, but I decided, nah, I think this scene with him versus the Rangers is good enough. Because if I had him in the movie for more scenes than that, then that's just being greedy with the runtime, and I have to be cautious how much they filmed in this damn movie. Because man, it's just like, oh my god, it's like, it's really ridiculous. And, you know, and there's some move sets that he ripped off that I would never thought I would make him pull off doing. Unfortunately, he didn't, you know, meet them again. It's just, again, due to runtime reasons, I just couldn't have him in the film again to fight him again. Maybe in another movie or so. This segue moment was planned according to, well, it was unscripted, but about the search for Chris. Now, considering that Devin Stewart, a character I had in the first movie with the likeness of Seth Green on it, he's absent in this movie. He was in the script, but I had to cut him because, again, I just had too many characters. So I just only had Chris Pine's character likeness, the one being captured by Trinkina and the Stingwingers instead, because again, most of the majority of the fan film is all based on my original ideas from Rise of Trakeena that never made into fruition years ago because after all, I was just, you know, having a hard time trying to get this movie off the ground and get it made, and things just didn't materialize the way I wanted it to, as thought. And yeah, because, you know, like I've discussed, I've just had some serious problems, you know, trying to get this movie done. Like I've said before, if you guys hear what I'm getting at with this. And here we are 2 hours and 17 minutes into the movie later, and yeah. You know, I think I have the time to talk about why I made Trinkina look the way she does in this film. You know, I think another thing that weighs this movie down was when I did Trinkina's paper doll puppet, made of mount board. You see, in terms of how I reimagined her for this universe, you see, I guess I just couldn't keep it in my pants. I should have never made Trinkina have mass revealing cleavage, because I think I've been saying this for like the last 6-7 years in this fandom, in terms of how I was doing this fan film and how I wanted this to go. In terms of me reimagining Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, if a Power Rangers Lost Galaxy movie reboot was ever made, and how Trinkina should look in a reboot and not copy completely everything in resemblance of her character. Because again, I didn't create Power Rangers. I do not own Power Rangers. That's a disclaimer there. I just borrowing these characters and stuff for fun, and as well as, you know, doing a who knows. And you see, the cleavage was probably the most distracting thing about the film, and the most distracting thing about her, because I think this has been, you know, I've been beating myself up about why I did this thing with her in this film. Maybe I kind of did wanted to make Trinkina, while she is an evil villain, but at the same time I wanted to make her not only evil but also ruthless and sexy, you know, bringing some sex appeal to her down the alley. And I guess I kind of wanted to make her sexy a little bit, but I think that was the biggest issue looking back now. I should have never over-sexualized her look to an extent, with the extension of the fact the cleavage is there, knowing that when Amy played Trinkina in Lost Galaxy, she didn't show cleavage. Since, again, you know, of course, you know, the whole thing about having female villains, you know, in Power Rangers. Well, why do you think the only female character in Lost Galaxy to show cleavage was Corone? Because, well, Corone was, you know, she was just, you know, redeemed from her path as Astronema from Power Rangers in Space. So, you know, Corone, cleavage for a Pink Ranger, wearing black leather, not a problem. But it's just, well, they can allow that for Corone, but they can't do that for Trinkina because. And, you know, I realize that I shouldn't let the cleavage, you know, the exposing cleavage throughout the scantily clad costume define the character, and the character defining the outfit. It's just, maybe I should have just covered her entire outfit up and not show that cleavage. Maybe I think there was another reason particularly why I added cleavage to, just at Rockville at the moment. Town Square, when I filmed this scene here with the Rangers at the subway tunnel, the Metro subway by the Regal Cinemas right over there in Rockville, if you guys saw this movie. I think it had to do with, if you think back to the Sentai that Lost Galaxy was adapted from, that Trinkina's supposedly Sentai counterpart, according to what Ranger Wiki said, Trinkina's Sentai counterpart is Steerwoman Shilinda. And you see, Shilinda and Ginga Man had cleavage in a very revealing outfit. She hardly had a fully covered costume. See, that's why the Power Rangers production team made Trinkina with a fully covered outfit. You see, the only thing I kept from Shilinda's counterpart from Ginga Man for Trinkina in this thing of Lost Galaxy for a fan film was the cleavage only, not show like, have Trinkina barely wearing a fully covered costume, because I think that suits her better than with the half naked Shilinda from Ginga Man, and that was the reason, and you know, because I thought with Trinkina wearing her normal costume, but the only thing removed was the cover up of her breasts, was to show that mass cleavage, and I don't know where my head was, and the next time, if I ever do have Trinkina in any of these Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan films again, I think I need to cover up Trinkina's cleavage a bit, and or tone the cleavage down if I ever have her in one of these movies again. Because, you know, I think that was one of the reasons why when I did this fan film originally back in my 12th grade year in high school 8 years ago, when I had someone to do the part, that's probably why she was so uncomfortable. Now I can see why she was so uncomfortable with the puppet and me in the film, because when I attached her to do the voice of the character, and when she didn't want to, she knew that the cleavage really made her uncomfortable, and several other women involved too. Okay, at this point now, once when I said Galactus arise when I did the ADR of the fan film, see, now this is where this part of the movie feels like traditional Power Rangers. Well, actually, it's been like that with Chameleon showing up and the Megazord fight, and then Galactus arise. But yeah, it's just, again, I just wanted to make this like Power Rangers by the second half, because the first half of this movie, it barely felt like it. This is where it really feels like Power Rangers, because it's just, after all, just this movie, despite it going very long, is still not very good. It's still not very good. But again, when I did the cleavage, again, with the cleavage, I've said this before in a podcast and stuff, that I was paying homage to, Elvira and some other gothic female characters that had exposing cleavage to their, aesthetic. And also even female superheroes and villains in Marvel and DC that looks like that now in today's, pop culture with comics and stuff. And even female superhero, supervillain cosplay in today's pop culture world. But you see, what I should have never done was do a, sexualized version of Trinkina, even though she's already a woman. But if this was, if there was a gender bent, no, that wouldn't make sense. No. But this Megazord fight, okay, now this is what I've been waiting to talk about, since we're, all right, 2 hours and 25 minutes in. So this Megazord fight, this one here, if you're following along with the commentary and watching the movie at the same time, this Megazord fight was my most ambitious. I've been planning this Megazord fight for 2 years to execute during the production process of this film. It took, well, without storyboards, and you see, that was the biggest flaw, like I said in my vlog. That I should have storyboarded the whole thing before I executed the actual thing, and then filming everything. And you see, in order for the sequence to come down well, and then as well as the pacing of it, see, that's the biggest flaw of this fight. Although I like it, even though I'm using the toys this time for this big fight, this big Zord fight, and all these stock explosions I had for the special effects and everything, and the sound effects to make the fight come off like it is. It's kind of like a 10-minute toy commercial with these. It's like watching this Megazord fight looks like a 10-minute toy commercial in a way. And once again, this is just me ripping off the 4th episode of the Greenwood Evil saga from Mighty Morphin, but with the Lost Galaxy characters. But see, again, if this was a Mighty Morphin Power Rangers fan film, and this was my take on the Evil Green Ranger saga, this would have been it. But this with the Galaxy Rangers, knowing by my knowledge of the source material and how stuff played down in that season, because, Mighty Morphin nostalgia is very rampant, and Green Ranger nostalgia. But again, I wanted to do it in homage and tribute to the Evil Green Ranger saga, particularly the 4th episode when the Megazord's power levels were and residuals were taken down because of Rita's eclipse. But again, Trinkina is no Rita Repulsa, but you get the gist there. And then the Magna Defender. Well, now about the Magna Defender situation at this point in the film, I just wanted to make his role minimal, because again, I just wanted to focus more on Trinkina and the Galaxy Rangers. That's why characters like Magna Defender and VillaMax and them had less screen time, because I wanted to focus on the characters. I wanted to focus on filming scenes and such, and tell the story of, more importantly, because I didn't want all these other characters taking away, time from the characters I'm mostly focusing on the most, and Trinkina being one of them. Because if I take away, screen time from characters like her, then her opportunity of being in the film a lot of the time will be robbed. And that was one of the reasons why, when I did Rise of Trakeena originally in 2010, 2011, back, once again, it just didn't materialize, because, the issues why, and I've said this many videos in passing on my YouTube channel, and even when discussing this kind of thing to some people, if they even care about this or not, when knowing I'm the only one, And it really go to show that I wanted to do this kind of thing. When people didn't care or didn't want to support, because, and I think that was another thing what hurted me and my progress on this fan film for so long. I think of all the years I've spent of this decade, and I know 8 years is a bit much and it's too long and too late, but I just been wasting a lot of time and energy, even though I devoted my time and energy to get this made, because when things wasn't working out when I wanted it to, and when I didn't have, like, let's say, the money to buy certain things to make this a believable product and a believable thing I would make for someone who's the only one making a Power Rangers fan film and no one else was involved. That is one of the reasons why I did this all by myself. Because when I did had some people to do this movie, because I think when they probably knew that this was going to be a paper doll movie, they were like, "Oh, let's run away because this is going. I hope he fails at this." Because knowing that the fact, if it's a paper doll, if the characters are made of paper and cardboard, it's going to fail. And that's why I had those in real life and in the fandom out there somewhere out of the random bully the crap out of me for making a fan film that was made of something like this. And I guess they just probably didn't understand where I was coming from with this. And I guess they just wanted me to make a fan film that was exactly like how many fans of anything would do, with friends and family involved in their project. Because considering me, that's the sad truth about me. When I wanted help and I wanted people to be involved, and I told them I'm making a movie, and they're like, "Sorry, I have other things to do. I'm too busy with life, or I'm too busy with this." See, that's probably why I decided. And then when they saw that, for those who don't care about Power Rangers like I do, they did not want nothing to do with the movie. That's why I did all of this on my own. So yeah, poor sucker Anthony Marsh Jr. doing this all by myself. That's sad, but true. It's sad, but true. But when I did want to help, everybody wanted to back me up. But when they did want my help, and then when people wanted to help me on this thing, then I was like, I don't know how I feel about this, having you guys involved, and then you guys are going to screw up what I originally visioned. That's why I did these things on my own, because I just wanted to do this my way. And I mean, I guess I had a lot of creative control on this film, because I didn't want, if I had people come in, to help me on this thing, even if the film was going to be, if this film was, let's say, an hour 50, or let's say if it was a 50-minute fan film or so, short film, then people would take control and take advantage of what I envisioned, and then input, I guess maybe I was lacking, creative teamwork and effort. If I was to do this movie with people and not just me doing everything, see, then it would just me being selfish and entitled. And I think that's what, cut me short of doing anything with anyone. And I guess maybe, well, if this is my movie, my project, my dream, this is all me, nobody else. So I have to, oh, and also a little Easter egg, when I, in that shot with the Galaxy Megazord, you can see that reflection of my face, in that shot, by the way, because even though I haven't shown my face in any of these movies in a long time since Rise of Trakeena, but this is the first time in a long time since then, but it's just a brief Easter egg, because I understand I should have, edited my face out of that reflection of the Galaxy Megazord, because of the die-cast parts of the Bandai toy. Oh God, even though after 2018, after 25 years of Power Ranger toys by Bandai, I'm going to miss Bandai of America. I mean, even though the first 10 years they, imported, Megazord toys from the Bandai Japan toys, but yeah, when they imported what was die-cast from the Bandai Japan toys and made it an American re-release, but under the Power Rangers product moniker. So, yeah.
Since my plan worked, the worst is yet to come.
You will pay
this is an example that the Rangers are just so unlucky with this being the Wrath of Trakeena, basically. I think the intent was, when I wrote the script way back in 2014, I think the plan for this movie was to have the Rangers lose. This is an example that not the Power Rangers don't always win here. See, when you got a Power Rangers villain, albeit a fan favorite, being so powerful at his or her own game of evil, this is the point where I wanted the Rangers. This is an example where the Rangers don't really win all the time. And, well, basically, the Rangers that I have in this continuity are hardly even winning anything. And I guess maybe, as a writer of these movies, maybe the Rangers were the real villains the whole time. I mean, Tony's team of Rangers as the Galaxy Rangers, maybe they were the real villains. Probably in speculation, probably. Because maybe I guess it goes to show that my OC characters as Power Rangers must suck at being Power Rangers. And I guess maybe I made Trinkina the hero, even though Trinkina's evil through and through. It's good to be bad, But no, in fact, Trinkina's evil. She never did anything good. She has to be evil because that was her character. But you see, the way how I was writing this off, I guess this is one of the worst ways to write a film like this, based on something well known by the fans. And I guess maybe I kind of made the Rangers out to be villains. And even when you get to the end of this movie, the Rangers were the real villains. And I made Trinkina the hero. Because after all, so much for that coincidence of what happened within Avengers Infinity War when Thanos snapped his fingers when he got the Infinity Stones on the gauntlet and wiped half of the 50% of the universe dead and saved the other 50%. I think Thanos, while he was really seen as a villain in most points in that movie, and yes, by the way, I have seen Avengers Infinity War, but then it seemed like at the end it's like Thanos was the hero the whole time, but he really was doing some evil stuff like killing people and then, the Infinity Stones and so forth. But in contrast, here for Power Rangers, that's how I made Trinkina to be. I mean, Trinkina, if I did what Infinity War did, but again, what does that have anything to do with Power Rangers? It's not like, let's say Trinkina's staff was the Infinity Gauntlet, and then once we get to the end of the movie, something terrible happens to the Rangers. Like, what if Trinkina had an Infinity Gauntlet-like glove, and with magical gems to it, and then once she got all the gems, and with the snap of a finger, half of the universe, and especially all the Power Rangers, are wiped out of existence, and Trinkina won, But unfortunately, that's something I know, because after all, after seeing the ending of Infinity War, that just traumatized me of what I just saw in the theater. But when I get it on Blu-ray later to watch at home, I can see and acknowledge why Thanos fully did it. And even though they probably did it because of shock value, probably. And you see, I just wanted to, according to what I did with the characters here, I just wanted the Rangers to fail. I wanted them to doubt themselves, like, are they even worthy of being Power Rangers? Kind of like the Overdrive Rangers. Well, whereas as opposed to, let's say, the Megaforce Rangers, knowing Megaforce, those guys were just too cocky and being too easy to fight off their enemies and defeat their enemies so thoroughly and easy. So let's say the Megaforce Rangers were the real villains the whole time and not the War Star or the Armada the whole time of Megaforce. That's my little fan theory for Megaforce right there. And you see, I just wanted the Rangers to suffer the Wrath of Trakeena, so that's why with every single defeat and loss in this movie, I think I wanted to make the Rangers fail because, well, I guess I kind of, as a fan and as a writer of this fan film, maybe I wanted Trinkina to make the Power Rangers suffer. This is something that Trinkina in the TV show and all the Prime continuity could have done to the Power Rangers. But of course, every season near the end, the Power Rangers have to stand victorious once the main villain that they've been facing for so long is defeated or destroyed. And, at the end of their season, and, they stand they win at the end of the season. at the end of each season. But here in this fan film, I wanted the Rangers to fail because in consequence of what happened, why they took away someone that Trakeena cared about. So that's why I wanted Trinkina to be so vengeful, so bitter, so cannibalistic in a way where I wanted her. Yeah, the Elvira cleavage in that shot again with her looking like that. But anyway, and that cemetery that took place where I live at in Gaithersburg. That cemetery right there by that 7-Eleven, right there. Yeah. So Anyway, I just wanted her, to win and the Power Rangers to fail. Kind of like what happened in Turbo when Divatox blew up the power chamber at the end of Turbo and the Turbo Rangers lost. Or like in Season 3 of Mighty Morphin, when the Mighty Morphin Rangers lost their powers for good, and then when they, restored time, from Master Vile's time manipulation spell with the Zeo Crystal and restored everything back in balance of time and age and everybody's proper ages. And then when Rito and Goldar blew up the command center, that was exactly an example that the Power Rangers lost there. Now, anyway, back to this. This scene is probably one of my most powerful scenes I ever shot. I mean, not as powerful, in context and theory and concept, but in execution. I never thought about doing a scene in any of my Power Rangers fan films, 2 of them though thus far, where I would film a scene in a cemetery where I had a Ranger reflect on the death of one of their own and thinking that, it's my fault that I caused you get killed in a fight. Now, if this was like Leo labeled with the likeness of the following aforementioned actor, and Kendrick's ghost was talking to Leo, but okay, this was something I did take in resemblance from the beginning of Protect the Quasar Saber from Lost Galaxy, where instead of Maya talking to Kendrick's ghost, it's my Red Ranger talking to the Pink Ranger's ghost instead of the Yellow Ranger. Because, again, as much as I hate Maya and Serena Vincent, I don't mean in a sense with Serena as a person, but as an actress, I just didn't find Maya convincing of a character. Again, like I said about Lost Galaxy, in general, it's just Maya was just wasted potential. She could have been something more. Because again, if I were to go with the names of these characters again, and with the likenesses and based on the resemblance of the characters and with the names, because you can tell that with Wes Bentley's head on that puppet, that could have been Leo, and with Katie Cassidy's likeness, that should have been Kendrick's, and so such. Because again, like I said, because if I went with those same names, if this was like, let's say, if this was in continuity, but in an alternate universe of Power Rangers, but which will make things a lot jarring and confusing for the fans, then at that rate, this fan film and the last one would have had a lot of Power Ranger fans in droves, in which unfortunately you did. At this rate, this is where the Rangers try to beat Trakeena, but then things get really worse. So here we are at the climax of the movie. The climax is really long. Trust me, it's a really long conclusion to a film I've worked on for so long. 8 years, and every single 365 days I've spent and somewhat wasted on trying to get this made. you can tell that this was somewhat payoff, but it really didn't pay off at the slightest. I don't even know if you guys think so or not, but really, it's just been a long time since I never really thought I would pull off something I never got to do years ago, because people would say, I'll never make this, I'll never get this off the ground. I mean, from now on, I'm just going to ignore the hate that I got from people in the past, and even today, even I'll get hate now because of something like this. But I don't care. If I'm going to keep on making more Power Rangers Lost Galaxy movies like this, even no matter how hard I try and how many times I try too hard. But I'm going to keep on and on and on and make another one like this and try to get it right, because this was an okay attempt, but it just wasn't a good one.
Ooh, looky here. The Red Ranger. What do you want?
That was quite a performance what you did to our Megazord yesterday. Not amused.
Well, I'm an artiste of destruction, of course. You think they gonna call me the insectile queen of darkness for nothing?
Yeah, blah, blah, blah. I've been hearing the same story.
And about this, now there were like 2 or 3 different versions of this scene setting up the beginning, the climax, where Trinkina confronts one of the Rangers on top of the Notre Dame de Paris. Now, what I didn't say in my vlog video, if you watched it or not, hearing me what I said about my film for the final say, the Notre Dame de Paris thing, that I wanted to symbolize, you know, the things that was going on between the two, like, you know, sort out differences, and you know, I guess I was paying homage and tribute to someone like, you know, the Hunchback of Notre Dame in a way, without a Quasimodo in the Power Rangers universe. And really, because, you know, I really wanted to make that symbolize what hell that the Power Rangers went through, and having, you know, the Notre Dame de Paris fictionally depicted in Power Rangers. And, you know, imagine that as like the Paris Dome, as I like to call it, the Paris Dome. Like, you know, if Terra Venture was an international space colony that, you know, took inspiration from all the cities and continents and, you know, states of across the entire universe, especially, you know, from countries like Europe and Belgium and, you know, Berlin and Barcelona, you know, countries like that, you know, countries, you know, like that, and you know, and Russia or France or you know, London, you know, something like that, to make it feel like it's an international space colony in some way. I don't know. I mean, out of context, yeah, because I thought to symbolize the unholy hell the Rangers have faced. I wanted the climax take place to start off by starting off at the Notre Dame de Paris, and for the final standalone battle between Trinkina and the Red Ranger, this symbolized that fight, because I really wanted it. I wanted to go all out at the end of the movie. So, even though this was going to be the most cathartic finale out of the 2 movies, soon to be 3, I've done so far. But it's not by any means perfect, though, since after all, most of the fighting is all video game footage, but then there's more of my puppet footage interacting between it and spliced, because I just wanted to go all out with this movie, you know, something I couldn't have done for 8 years because of things when I worked on it years ago when it was originally called Rise of Trakeena. And that's why I wanted to pull off something I wanted to do for 8 years that I never got to do, that I wanted to do, that I could, and I did it. Even though I wasn't executed well, but I finally did it. Because after all, it took me 8 years since 2010 to make Power Rangers Lost Galaxy The Rise of Trakeena. And here I am, 2018, 8 years later. And even though I've said that it's not really good at the end, you know, in terms of how it's done at the end of the day and how everything was put together, but overall it wasn't the best thing I've done, but it was something that I should be proud of doing, but it just overall wasn't a good film production wise, or how it was done single-handedly for its production. But it's just, if I would have done the thing sooner long ago and not wait until in this day and age before the decade is over and I'm sitting here wasting my time complaining about Power Rangers, the show itself, well, that shot there was stop motion. Red Ranger getting thrown around and stuff, beat up. And, it's like, man, all that time wasted on this production and not time on anything I should be doing with my life after high school. I wanted to be, this movie was kind of dark. I wanted to make this more, competent than the last movie, because I didn't want this movie playing off like it's a stupid parody, like someone a troll in the comments of my first movie back when it was originally uploaded at first said, saying it was coming off like a South Park parody with Power Rangers. I didn't want it to be it like that most of the time, because if it did, then I'll be like, man, what I did here was a joke. Again, see, I gotta stop listening to those haters and trolls, and this kind of thing I've been doing here is what makes me happy. And if any of you have a problem with it, then you shouldn't be following me or following my content. Even though not everybody watches or listens to what I say or do, but hey, I mean, you can tell that I'm trying to put my footing out somewhere when doing something like this. And it shows. Knowing that, yeah, I should have never did that with the Red Ranger beating the crap out of Trinkina with this sword, fighting her off, because, well, there were some high stakes, because if she admitted that she killed the team's first Pink Ranger, then she was the one that was going to pay the consequence. And I guess in context, I had him to do that, I guess, because after all, it's kind of like this movie was a film about revenge between both parties. If the Rangers killed a villain's loved one, the villain would kill a Ranger's loved one, the Ranger's loved one, and both have to go at each other's throats and battle it all out, and then both of each other, one party has to suffer the consequence and the wrath of said villain, and the villain, on the other hand, on the other side of things, want to bring the team vindication. That was my plan with the themes of this movie. Even though, if you rewatch this movie, even if it's 3 hours, wasting your time, you can tell that I was trying to have at least some coherent thematic elements and character development, because even despite that, I was having some trouble with this fan film for so long. But again, it was just so difficult, just trying to get everything, together, and, just dealing with life. And, I can't let my real life define my hobbies and passion, because I realized that my real life and then the interferences of real life getting in the way too much is probably one of the reasons why I lost motivation or passion in such on this stuff anymore. Because, again, I should have never let my real life interferences get in the way of the story I'm trying to tell for myself, or for some people who want to watch something like this or not. And that's why I let real life play out in this film. And real life tells the story as opposed to the TV trope. Real life tells the story. Whatever happened in my real life, and it affects behind the scenes of your movie or a TV show. It happens a lot. Trust me, it happens a lot. And from now on, I am no longer, take any references of my real life, anything that happened in my real life in any of my Power Rangers fan fiction or anything anymore, because I realize putting my personal details out there, that's one of the reasons why, and especially the way from my tone of voice and attitude in the past on YouTube, it has gotten me in a lot of trouble. And that's why I have been sitting with these consequences for years and, been beating myself up over those consequences because I said things, that I shouldn't have said, that, I don't think people want to hear. And that's why I guess I was just maddenly frustrated with things, and I shouldn't take my frustrations out. I mean, I think my negative attitude is why I never got these films done the way I want them to, and then worrying about other things in life too, that may be negative. And I mean, I should have been positive. I should be thinking positive, and like all the time, not like some of the time or none of the time. Because if I just think negative a lot of the time, nothing is going to go well, and nothing is going to be set straight. And that's why I really need to focus on something and don't let interferences and let something distract me and cause me to lose all kinds of concentration and focus. And then something like this would be the result of why the thing is a mess. And of course, not everything I do is perfect, and same go for any of you if you want to make Power Ranger fan films unlike mine in the future, or anything of any matter. But still, that's just the truth. Now, at this point in the film, I can't believe I made Trinkina go all fucking Mary Sue. All Mary Sue. Here I go with the F-bomb in the commentary again. I mean, I can't believe I made her go all, super powered, super villain, beating the crap out of the Rangers. Again, it was my wish fulfillment to make Trinkina the most powerful villain in all Power Rangers. Well, in an alternate universe anyway. Because, yeah, in the TV show, Trinkina was barely powerful. But we seen how powerful she was on the show. But in this fan film, I think I took her power level of being a villain too far in terms of her fighting abilities against the Rangers. And I know I should have never made her that powerful like that, because then that's just pure lazy writing and, like cliche as it is, according to what Deadpool puts it, that's lazy writing, and yeah, what I did here was lazy, making her so powerful and beating the crap out of her, just making her easily win and the Rangers lose. See, it goes to show I was making her too powerful in a way. And I should have just, for a character that's a legacy character, but reimagined, I should have never made her that powerful, because Trinkina never had that much immense power. If this was, Amy Rolls Trinkina, and this was the cast of the Lost Galaxy, reimagined, and if this was Leo and his team getting their asses whooped by Amy's Trinkina in Power Rangers continuity, how would that have, benefited with a doubt? And really, I don't know why I did that, but it was a wish fulfillment in my mind when I wrote the film, and then when I was filming everything for 2 years. And I wanted Trinkina to win and beat the crap out of the Power Rangers, because despite I was such a huge fan of her character, I think that's one of the reasons why I took my Trinkina obsession as a Power Rangers fan in spite of out of nostalgia for 8 years. I guess I wanted to make her bigger and better and badder, like she should have potentially been, but due to the fact Trinkina lost at the end in the show in the final battle between her and the Galaxy Rangers on what was left of Terra Venture, I think this time around Trinkina deserves payback. She deserves to give the Rangers cruel punishment and suffering, because I think I made this movie in the perspective of Trinkina's point of view. In Trinkina's point of view, as I wrote the film, what if Trinkina was the one that won everything, defeated the Power Rangers, and the Rangers lost in a period where not named as Leo's team again. If there was a different team of Rangers consuming the Lost Galaxy powers, And if they were the ones that lost and lost their powers, lost their Zords, everything. Oh, that line where Tony said, we may not be Power Rangers, but we still have power. That line was lifted from Shane from the finale of Ninja Storm. So that's an Easter egg that I pulled from one of the seasons while this is still Lost Galaxy centric. But I just wanted to pay homage to the entirety of the history of Power Rangers for a few seasons, of all the 25 years we've had of the franchise, But originally, this fan film was supposed to be set for Power Rangers Lost Galaxy's 20th anniversary. Because, you see, when I made this fan film in 2016 and 17, I was rushing for 2019 to desperately come. Because 2019 is next anniversary. But I decided to slow up on that and realize that 2019 will come when it comes. So I decided now to put it out the same year as the entire franchise's 25th anniversary, because the 25th anniversary was this year. So I figured, well, what would be a perfect way to honor 25 years of Power Rangers, but none other release of this film then. So I'll figure out what to do for Power Rangers Lost Galaxy's 20th anniversary next year in the meantime. And, I don't know, but it's coming, because really I could have saved this movie for 3 years at the time when I filmed it from now, but I decided to release it this year because I feel like rushing 2019 to come, so because I can frantically want to obsess, honoring 20 years of my favorite Ranger season and just like say screw anything afterwards, but I can't do that because it just wouldn't feel right, because just simply because. So there's that, and so at this rate, this is the last. So this is the Rangers' last chance to stop Trakeena. Well, they get the win to some extent, but overall, Trakeena is who won the battle, everything of it. But and I really see if this is their last chance to try to stop her. Now, this is where they can finally get back on their feet and try to stop her, if they can. But really, see, this goes to show me and my lazy writing at the end of the movie, just making the Rangers wusses. But and then up to this point now, 3 hours and a minute in, and they're now getting their asses back up and fighting, for payback for everything she's done to them the whole movie. Even though, 3 hours is a bit much, but if I did this movie for under 2 hours, I could have cut down some stuff, because I mean, I just wanted to do something that no other Power Rangers fan thought of, for a long fan film, because we hardly have any long Power Ranger fan films out there, because I'm like, believe it or not, I'm the first Power Rangers fan and filmmaker to actually make a long 3 hour long Power Rangers fan film. And I know most people are not going to, acknowledge that in the fan base or anywhere on Ranger Board or anywhere, but anywhere in the fan film community, but they really need to know that I'm the very first person to do a long Power Rangers fan film of any kind, of any means. But I realize it's just something that I don't think people would be interested in. If this fan film was shorter, like most fan films are, I can understand, but I wanted to do this in the vein of a 3 hour epic, like any of those old 3 hour movies from the 50s, the 60s, like Cleopatra or 10 Commandments or Ben-Hur, which I was inspired by because of the length of the movie, of a movie like that. Because when you think of movies like Ben-Hur and Cleopatra, those movies were excessively long. They were 3 hours long, but you see, the minimum length of a movie, like especially like something like this should have been like 2 hours or less. But I went all out because this was 8 years worth of personal payoff, but 8 years of time I've wasted, basically, because I just wanted to do it.
Take me instead. Scorpius' death was actually my fault. So destroy me
Goodbye, old friend.
And yeah, I had to kill off VillaMax. Except Trinkina doesn't kill VillaMax in her deviant form, which is, of course, a fan favorite form of hers. I know a lot of you guys liked it from the show, but here, no. I decided kill him off in her normal state while she's still psychologically broken and you know, unhinged, you know, terrorizing the Rangers, making them miserable, and you know, killing people off. And with VillaMax's death in this movie, I feel like there is something, you know, despite my mention of Infinity War, I think there's something I might do something like this for Power Rangers Lost Galaxy 3 down the road. For my final installment of this series, I think I might try and do something, go all out, and make the next movie a war movie. And, you know, in the vein of a war movie, where you're going to have some characters you've been following or haven't followed that much at all throughout the 3 movies I've done, and kill off some characters, make room for some new ones until the trilogy's over, once I get to the, you know, the last installment. So the foreshadowing of VillaMax's death foreshadows what comes in store for the next movie. I don't even know if I will do Power Rangers Lost Galaxy 3 or not, but I really want to do Power Rangers Lost Galaxy 3. I really want to complete this trilogy, this potential trilogy, but I don't think, based on the failings of this movie, I don't know if I will do Power Rangers Lost Galaxy 3, because doing Rise of Trakeena wore me out. You know, the way how I treated Trinkina in my mind, really, because she's just only a fictional make-believe character. She's like, you know, the way how I made Trinkina in these movies, if she was a real person and not just some fictional character from a 20-year-old season of the show, of a TV show, she would be like this kind of girlfriend that I've been going, you know, that I've had problems with, and the more she nagged at me, you know, I shouldn't really say that word, some other word I should have described it, she would wear me out. And basically, Trinkina wore me out as a character. She really wore me out. I mean, yeah, she is one of the best villains Power Rangers ever had, and she's only a one of a kind from how she was, but this fan film, the way how I, you know, represented her character by name and costume only, and not her portrayal and personality only, you know, and personality, I just, I kind of did wore out the character and wore myself out from doing this character in film. And I feel like since this is her last scene at the time of this, the timestamp 3 hours 7 minutes in, this is the point where she leaves, because I feel like this is a sign where I feel like I think I've tried what I could with Trinkina. If I ever do bring Trinkina back, guys, if I ever do bring her back in another Power Rangers fan film again, especially a Lost Galaxy centric one again, I'll try to do Trinkina differently again, but still respect the original character that Amy Roll left us as the fans about her character's, you know, portrayal and legacy. If I ever do her character again, that's the end of the character. And the Rangers are screwed. See, without Trinkina with some Infinity Gauntlet to wipe the Rangers out of existence or anything, I think this is the biggest spoiler of the fan film if you haven't watched it yet. Because I understand, if you don't like I said in the beginning, if you don't like 3-hour videos or long videos, that is okay. You don't have to watch the end of this. Just click away, and maybe what I should have did was end this movie off where the Rangers said, "Man, we failed. We tried to stop Trinkina, but she was too powerful for us. Oh my God," and they're screwed. Just end the movie on that note, and then that post-credit scene with the tease of the next movie and the next villain. And as for the Super Mega Force stuff, Gokaiger, with Tony holding that Super Mega Saber, next movie, I'm going to retcon Super Mega Force and Gokaiger for the next movie, because, you see, here's the thing. all decade long. I could have had all the time to do my take of Gokaiger if I wanted to, and Super Mega Force, but I wasted a lot of time on Trinkina to the point that I just didn't have the time to do more Power Ranger fan films to spread out the decade. Instead, I spent so many years developing this, so therefore a lot of time I could have done on other projects and other fan films has been wasted on this movie, this project. And thus, the X-Borgs and the Armada from Super Mega Force shows up to Terra Venture as I splice that footage to make it look like, oh, it's the apocalypse, it's the apocalypse. And, yeah, because I wanted it to happen, because I wanted to go all out to end this movie on a cliffhanger. Because I planned that cliffhanger. This part of the movie was scripted, of course. This was in my script. Because I did this while I was watching Megaforce and Super Megaforce when I wrote the script for this movie. And then when I started filming during the second season of Dino Charge and the first season of Ninja Steel, I wasted so much time to do my own version of Super Mega Force before and Gokaiger before Saban even ruined that for the 20th anniversary of Power Rangers. So and thus, the end of the movie, I was going to, when I was going to edit this, I was going to put it, to be continued next time, Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, The Legends of Destiny. That's the name of Power Rangers Lost Galaxy 3. But, unfortunately, I didn't want to do it like Turbo's finale with the to be continued next time, Power Rangers in Space kind of thing. But, oh, this post-credit scene. Or pre-credits.
What do you think you'll be doing in the meantime?
Something personal. What do you plan on doing?
I have something planned for your Ranger problem. It is time. I welcomed Terra Venture to the Lost Galaxy.
And that's Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, The Wrath of Trakeena. Yeah. I had to end this movie on a cliffhanger because, well, it was the end. You know, I never got to do an ending like this for Rise of Trakeena in the past, but now with Wrath of Trakeena, I finally did it. So anyway, that's it for Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, The Wrath of Trakeena. Thank you for listening to my commentary on the movie. And, you know, thank you for watching the movie with me. I'll see you guys next time.